That's it. We are live again. Today is Friday, the 5th of October, 2018. Hello, chat room. And on the panel so far is our Patricia, Astral Thief, and guest Plain Permaculture. Also, Aaron, Project Lumen Aaron or Earth Aaron is going to join later on in a bit. But hello, everybody.
Hello, Karen.
Hello.
Hello, Plain.
Hey.
How's it going?
Nice that another member of our chat room has come on a hangout.
He's got a deep radio voice there, it seems.
I don't know about that.
We're saying this is like our first hangout then, yeah?
Yeah, first ever.
Don't worry, we won't meet you, promise. You were just explaining, like, obviously that question, we'll start with that, because what was it that's led you to here then, first of all? Like, you were just explaining it before you came live, and I said, stop, let's do this live.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a long story. I mean, it probably starts with, just the type of person I am. I'm one of those people that can kind of connect things or use my quote right brain, and I grew up in one of the larger cities in America, and you kind of get to know everybody's behavior, and you can kind of see the things that should be and shouldn't be. And
I think I'm picking up immediately that you're quite a sensitive person, Plain.
I mean, yeah, at times. It's almost like I don't know where to start.
Just go for it.
Yeah, so after going through all the indoctrination, let's say like the end of high school, I kind of figured out, I tried the whole college thing, and it was kind of just a version of high school where you had to pay for everything. And they tell you what you want to learn, or give you a curriculum, and so I kind of went away from that, and then I started. That was about the time when internet became more popular, and people started putting their ideas on the internet, and so there was a lot more information gathering on the internet, and I think I just was drawn to things like permaculture and natural living and natural building and stuff like that. And then through looking for information, you start to fall into these rabbit holes, into these conspiracies, and all the corruption and whatchamacallit, organized crime, as they say. And then eventually, about 3 years ago, I was actually about to quit computers altogether and the internet and all that stuff, and just focus on living naturally and developing stuff on the land where I live. And I came across a podcast on, I think it's Freeman Fly, or the Freeman Show, or something like that. And it was Rob Skiba talking about flat Earth. And so after that, I really dove into that, and flat Earth to me is really a return to Earth, and and a retreat from the being lost in space, and all the stuff that comes with that, all the scarcity and all that stuff. And so I was hoping people would really, or people might, since it's such an Earth central subject, that people would start connecting things like permaculture, but I wasn't really seeing that. So that's why I started the YouTube channel, and I'm trying to bring awareness to not just where we live, but how we could live. And yeah, that's sort of where I am.
Cool. So for people that don't know what that is, what is permaculture then?
Okay, well, like I say in the chat, a really short summary would be an ethical design science based on nature, or you could say creation. But you could say it's a whole systems approach to designing for living and thriving in abundance, or kind of like a channeling of spirit through an alignment of heart, mind, and body, or what you can use with your body, which is like common skills, abilities, or common knowledge. It's like an open source, it's a living natural science. So instead of doing all these controlled sort of dead experiments, it's a way of thinking and connecting all the dots, basically. And like permaculture books, I would consider to be descriptions of what some may call like the book of life, or what we all might consider, like, I don't know, some might say like the Holy Spirit, or just life in general, just the
well, looking at your posts and stuff, you know, it's about consciousness, waking up, we can. It's very positive and sort of spiritual, yeah?
Yeah, I try to balance. I mean, there's a lot of people that are exposing the negatives and the stuff with the corruption and the system, or the matrix, you might say. And there's a whole other positive side to the world that I think people are missing. Yeah, so a lot of what I cover is exposing the system, or I call it the unnatural system, just because, for instance, permaculture deals with natural systems and the living world around us, whereas a lot of the unnatural system is like manipulation of our world to a point where things become toxic or detrimental to our health or others around us.
So it's kind of like living off the grid, basically, then.
Yeah, that's a part of it, for sure.
So that's why you're not that so interested in computers and telephones, then?
Yeah. It's kind of hard putting it in words, especially because our language seems to be built around putting people in boxes or making people think a certain way. And a lot of how I think is more like pictures or how things connect. Like, for instance, the word permaculture was is a coined word, you know, from permanence or permanent and agriculture. That's how it started. And then eventually it just became culture in general. So all of human activities, basically.
And what you were already feeling like this anyway? You know, this is the way you were going anyway, and then Flat Earth just helped.
Yeah, I was gonna talk about kind of astrology at the beginning, but so
what,
I think people, huh?
You mean for this hangout or in your life? Oh yeah.
Because I think people are very unique. And a lot of times people view everybody as kind of like just the same sort of robotic shell, and you get programmed with the environment around you and stuff. But I think that we're all very unique from the beginning. And I think there's something to, well, there's obviously something to astrology and the energies that are imprinted on you throughout your whole life from conception, and how those energies interact with you throughout your life. It's probably a chicken or the egg sort of thing, a forward and a backward sort of connection with the world.
Your friends and family like with you, or are you doing this kind of on your own?
Oh, yeah. My family is on various levels of awareness, but you know, since I've been a pretty genuine person throughout my life, they've had to kind of accept me, and therefore they accept what I'm saying, you know?
Well, that's good. Because a lot of us are having a problem with that one, being accepted, our family's accepting what we're saying.
Yeah. I'm just one of those type of people that it's hard for me not to be genuine.
That's good to know. Thanks. We're glad about that one. So what did you want to do a bit about astrology then?
Sure. I mean, I'm not a quote expert in that field, but have you ever heard of something called human design?
As in what? Go on, explain then.
It's related to astrology, kind of. It combines astrology, I Ching, what else?
Marilyn in the chat room says yes.
Is this like delving into astrotheology?
Astrotheology. I don't know. What is astrotheology to you?
Well, that's more or less the theory of everything.
Yeah. It's human design is kind of like a combination astrology energy mapping of yourself.
Right.
And actually, I mean, it combines astrology, I Ching, what else? Chakra systems, auras. It's just, it's a kind of detailed mapping of, yeah, your energies and how they interact with each other in the world. It includes some false things, some obviously false things like astronomy, and the founder of it supposedly channeled it from some entity or something. But if you look into it, there's parts of it that really ring true. And so it's obvious to me that there's some sort of energetic imprint on all of us.
So do you want to keep talking now? We're listening. What was it you'd like to explain about it a bit more?
Well, I don't really know a whole lot. I just know that if you're genuine, if you're not very fake, you don't play a part, you don't play a character like society wants you to, it seems. Then if you look up if you go to one of the human design websites and you look up your birth date and time, I think you have to know the time, although sometimes it doesn't really matter the time.
The time you were born.
Yeah. It'll give you a certain chart.
Well, because you need, like in astrology, your rising sign. That starts your rising sign.
It's called a natal star chart, or natal birth chart, I should say.
Yeah. It combines a lot of different things. So it's a pretty unique system. I'm not totally into it. I just know that there's a lot of truth to it, because if I look up my chart, it seems pretty spot on. Although you can never box someone into a chart or a reading. You know, we're all more than that.
I would say that you actually can, and you should pay attention to your star signs and astrology, because it's very much a part of you. Seriously, it's connected to you.
Well, yeah, like I said, there's a lot of truth to it, but I just feel we're more than any words or any charts or any drawings or anything like that. At that point, you're separating yourself from the whole into something singular or pieces of the whole. But it's probably both. Like I said, the chicken or the egg thing, like it's all connected.
Right. And I sort of know what you mean, because I got really into astrology, but I also like the Vedic astrology as well. That's Indian, the ones with the dots on their head. India, not the red Indian or the native people. Those, it's India country. And in that, I'm a female snake. And then they break it down where they've got more astrology signs, and so there's 3 in a month. So the one before me is a male snake, then a female snake, then a female dog, and then it goes on. And when I look at that, even if I don't like what a lot of it says, it's me. As well as what astrology, you know, like there's a rising sign, your moon sign's really important. And I like to look at relationship. Of course, it's all broken down into 12 houses. And, you know, each house means something. So there's like your sex life, your relationship life, your here and nows. There's education, health. It's all different things. And they're in different star signs. So you're not just the star sign you are. You're part of all of the signs in different bits. Yes, a puzzle. It takes years to learn astrology, though.
Yeah. At least to get into the details.
I know a little bit. I couldn't do what Santos does, you know, the conjuncts and the negatives and the positives. But yeah, when you look at all that, even your rising sign or your moon sign. And then the book I was telling you about, for instance, these animals are female or male. So, for instance, I'm a female snake, and then there's a female dog. So, you know, this right brain thing, that should be that anybody in the female side, mentally, physically, emotionally, will be female, even if they're male, sort of thing. They're more likely to be more female thinking because they're a female dog or whatever they are. Some of them aren't like that, like monkeys. Whoever's a monkey, it's a bit like they're a bit sort of, I don't know, they don't monkey. It's a bit different. But most of the female signs, if you're a female, then that means that the man should be more female. But does anybody take any notice of usually getting to know themselves? Not a lot of people do. Some of us do, but a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
I mean, even what star sign you're in, it is a different level. Like it starts off with Aries, and that's the baby, I am. And then it goes on. You know, there's infant, child, adolescent, grown up, and then it carries on. And the last star signs aren't to do with like humans, they're to do with moving on. And of course, when you get to being a Pisces, it's supposed to be that they've lived all the lives and they know everything. But often if you talk to a Pisces and you say something, they'll just go, I know. Because they do know. But again, you know, it's quite complicated. I mean, I can just go somewhere and do someone's birth chart. It's called astro.com. You can freely get birth charts from there, but it'll only give you a quarter of it, because obviously they want you to pay for the rest. So again, you know, there's these 2 astrology books, and yet I'm both of them. I'm the female dog and a Gemini with what is it? I've got Libra rising, Moon in Pisces. I'm all these things. It's quite crazy, really.
Yeah, in human design, there's a lot of the quote profiles. That's what they call each design for each person. A lot of the profiles are personal, so those people are on a personal path. So they're here to learn things and have a personal journey. And then some people are here for interpersonal reasons, and they're able to learn from the collective experience and knowledge. And that, like, for instance, that would be my chart, or my profile is an interpersonal profile. And one thing I wonder is if some of us have lived multiple lives or been here before, or if we're just able to tap into the collective sort of knowledge or knowing.
Are you this bit where you feel like you're an antenna, and this consciousness thing is like, it's not a burden exactly, but it's on your shoulders?
For instance, I'm a 6/2 in those profiles. There's different numbers up to 6, and the 6 is a role model, and there's a lot more detail about it, but basically the beginning 30 years or about 30 years of your life, you're going through a sort of like, for me, I view it as a refresher course on life. And then the next 30 years, you kind of retreat from the public, and then the last 30 years, or however it turns out, it doesn't have to be 30 years, but the last bit of your life, you're sort of a teacher. And
it's so strange that you say that, Plain, because I thought exactly something very similar, only like the same hour. Almost like your life, if you imagine you've got 90 years, the first 30, it's like you're learning. The second 30, you're, you know, pondering over it and going through things and learning, making mistakes and everything. The last 30, it's like you're reflecting upon all of the things that you should have done and didn't do. And, you know, you reflect upon things, then you understand what life is about. It's about experiencing. It's about being here, experiencing.
It's about being now. It's about being here and now.
Yeah, that's all we have, isn't it? It's all we've ever had, here now.
But we forget that, don't we, when we're running to the bus or whatever it is, running to work, or we're caught in all that and bills and whatever. And you've got to remember always we're here now. That's what we've got. And that's the consciousness bit, because we're conscious, but we probably don't feel like it most of the time. We're like robots.
Yeah, I always think about it, if you would just view everybody's behavior and lifestyle without money, not just without the money system we have, but just without the transaction of money or even trading. If you just, would you go to your job and do what you do every day if there wasn't money involved, or if there wasn't, would you be driven to do the things you do and live the way you do?
Plain, 1 second. But Astral, what did you call us the other day about all this? What were we? It wasn't a very nice word.
Prostitutes.
Yeah.
We're prostitutes, and we go to work in the highest paying brothels. That's our jobs, and that's what we do. We get the best wages because we've educated ourselves, at school, to do whatever it is we're going to do. And at the end of the day, it's a simple job. It's like red button, stop. Green button is the start. It's bloody simple, regardless of what you do. I'm a carpenter, but it's the same shit. Red button, green button, red button, green button, or vice versa, whatever, it's the same shit, man. You just learn something and you repeat it. You've learned something and you repeat it. And all we've done is sell ourselves to the highest bidder. Who's going to give me the biggest wages? So, which, brothel, if you're working in an office building or whatever, that's your brothel. You're a prostitute and you're going in your brothel. Because at the end of the week, the end of the month, you get your pay. There you go. That's what you're worth. That is all you're worth. When we look at it for what it is, people ought to then realize, we're not really worth much in the eyes of society. Yeah, I'm yielding the floor.
Same sort of thing what you were saying, just put in different words.
Yeah. So, I'd like to talk a little bit more about permaculture.
Please, yeah, go.
Yeah, so being an ethical design science, well, let me just start with the history. It was created by two guys. One, Bill Mollison, a professor, I think in Australia, if not Tasmania, and his graduate student named David Holmgren, and it started as a sort of collaborative thesis between David Holmgren and Bill Mollison, and they developed the ideas or the system into a book called Permaculture 1 that came out, I think, 1978. And it first, like I said, it first started as an approach to permanent agriculture, and then developed into all of human culture. And there's 3 ethics that everything's based off. Basically, it all boils down to earth care, but the first one's earth care, the second one is care of people, and then the third one is basically return of surplus to the first 2, or you could say care of future. And let's see. it's so what you would first do, say you're approaching, or you're trying to develop, and by the way, this can be used for any size property or system. It could be used for a whole city. It could be used for just your backyard. But you basically go, or you can you design for an area by observing first, and then after you figure out all the elements and how they move through the system, like the sun angles, how it floods, maybe where water comes through, all the winds, all the aspects of that particular piece of property. You then typically draw a few designs, or design charts. Like you draw a sector map, which is what I just said, all the elements, how they move through the system. And then you figure out what's called zones. And there's typically 5 zones. So zone 0 would be the house or the living structure or shelter. And then zone 1 is the immediate area around. And as you get out further and further, it's you design for from the most intensive use, or the most energy requiring use in the system. So, for example, around your house, you would put all the culinary gardens and where you would go to very often. And then going out further, it would be typically zone 5 is natural wilderness and wildlife and all that stuff. And zone 4 maybe is a little bit of manipulation by you, but pretty much wild. Zone 3 might be major crops or things that you don't have to harvest very often, like orchards or food forest, or larger food forest. Probably food forest would go in number 2 also, but this is all really dependent on preference and how, like I said, how the elements move through the system. And a lot of it is based off of the best examples of nature, or examples of abundance in nature. And it's thought of as a sustainable system, but really sustainable is just getting by. Like if you think of sustainable in terms like that as an energy audit, sustainable is basically energy of a system replacing itself over the life of the system. But what you want to aim for is abundance. And so with abundance, you can harvest things out of the system, for example, food, and you can get to a point where you're even providing food for others, and the system still has plenty of energy to give back, or for you to give back to the system. Let's see. Food forests is a big is a popular term in permaculture, and it basically is just designing a permanent garden or forest with edibles and things you can use. Let's see, like like timber or things you can use to make furniture or houses. And it's based off of like for example, the in nature, a really productive food forest would be like a rainforest. So, and actually an interesting thing I've read about is that when people first got to North America or America, they found all these essentially giant food forests all around. And it seems like one of the ways to disconnect us and separate us from nature was this introduction of scarcity or cutting down all these forests and food sources. Let's see what else.
It's okay. You're
It.
doing really well, because like you said, it's one thing sitting in the chat room chatting. It's another thing being on a hangout, isn't it? So you're doing really well.
Yeah, it's kind of like talking to myself or talking to a wall, but
no, we're here. We are here. They are there.
I'm not interrupting that, so, but yeah, you're good. Keep going on, man. It's very interesting. Very interesting.
Do you have any experience with natural building?
What do you mean by that? Like mud?
Sure, it could be.
Yeah, like
have
hay
you heard
bales
of cob?
Hay bales, and I've seen buildings made out of old car tires and tin cans. Believe it or not, seriously, and mud. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they call those earth ships. The car tire centric ones. Yeah, like permaculture would also include the efficient building of your home. So you would want to look into things like natural building or earth building, and for instance, when we built our home, we included concepts like passive solar, passive cooling, and obviously we're off grid and stuff like that. But
yeah, I was into passive houses. I still am, actually. I've got big files of information on passive houses because, well, it's the way forward in a sense, you know. It's just not done enough.
Yeah, I mean, these are homes that will last hundreds, if not thousands of years, especially in a dry environment. You can see examples of that. I think in Yemen, there's really old examples of cob. There's and I think there are multiple story homes too, or buildings.
Thousands of years.
Well, what we're told is thousands of years, so maybe it's hundreds. I don't know. There's really old examples of also food forests in the desert. I had a video called Permaculture Food Forests, but some guy thought it was too much of his video, so he put a copyright strike on it. But there was an example of essentially an oasis in the desert where people had been harvesting and using it for 2,000 years, they said. So these are...
Yeah, we can't say what time is anymore and what it really is. They've lied so much about all of it.
Yeah. Also, I'd like to talk about the potential of what we could do with things like permaculture. Like my very first video really has to do with regreening or greening deserts. And there's lots of examples all around the world, even if they didn't call it permaculture, of people essentially just getting whatever they could to grow and starting forests in the worst conditions. There's one guy they call, I think it's Forest Man of India or something like that. I think you can find it that way. And he essentially took a barren wasteland that was heavily eroded by this giant river. I forgot what it's called in India. And he one day as a kid, he saw these snakes wash up and then not be able to survive after the waters receded. And he went to the elders and they just told him to plant bamboos. And so he started with bamboos and then started planting and planting. And then eventually to this day, he has a forest larger than, they say larger than Central Park. So just a giant forest somewhere. And eventually elephants came in, tigers, all sorts of animals. And at some point the system will expand itself and you don't have to plan as much. Like obviously things will seed itself, the trees will produce seeds. But he said he has done a lot of the planting. And there's other people in China, in those deserts, and there's people in Africa that are doing the same thing. A lot of them come up with their own techniques, but essentially they have very similar motivations, ideas, and outcomes.
Plain, I've seen it myself. I lived in Israel in the Negev desert, and it's just desert, brown sand, hard rock desert, you know. And then we went over the road on a tractor, over, you know, a bit of desert to dry area, and then over, it's like the River Jordan, dried up though, into more or less Jordan. And there was like fields and fields and fields of greenery. And it was in desert. The only reason why it grew was because of the water and the chemicals that they were using to grow, you know. But it was like, when I first saw it, it was like, wow, this is amazing. It's when you see an oasis in the middle of a desert as well. Been going for, you know, hours and hours and hours, sand and desert and nothing. And suddenly you see like just miles and miles of, you know, palm trees and greenery. It's like, what? How did this happen? You know? Yeah, it's just brilliant. I love seeing that.
Yeah, there's a really popular guy who was taught by Bill Mollison. His name is Jeff Lawton, and he, I think through his wife, who has family in what's it called? Jordan. In Jordan by the Dead Sea, he has he's had 2 projects there. I think he calls it regreening the desert projects, and he essentially has created a food forest from maybe the worst conditions in the world. So the lowest spot in the world, the driest, the hottest, or some of the hottest. I don't know if it's technically the hottest, but the underground water is salty, just rock and sand, just probably the worst conditions you can think of. And he's created a food forest from that. So if he can do that, or if they can do that, then basically we could we could regreen most deserts. We could regreen the Sahara if we wanted to. So the potential is endless.
Yeah, well, someone also put in the chat the other day, Gaddafi actually made a river in the desert. He made a river, underground river from the desert. He knew what needed to be done, but obviously it's no longer there. It's been destroyed. We know people that have too much influence, power.
Yeah, so the reason why I created a YouTube channel is to try to get everybody aware, connected with all the people that really know how to live. So permaculture has been going along since, at least since the 80s is probably when it really got popular. And if we could combine our awareness with our ability to live, I think we would be pretty unstoppable. I mean, as I like to say, the preventative is the cure, and the solutions are essentially, they have to, if we're going to be able to how should I say it? Rebalance the world, bring back a lot of the positive, then we're how do I say it? We're going the answers have to be simple enough for it to be possible. So the solutions are more than likely very simple and probably timeless, probably the things that have always been in front of us and are right there in front of us are the things that we need to be doing. And if we could get a lot more of this this awareness to become action, then I think we have a really good chance at rebalancing the world and turning things around.
We definitely need things to be balanced and turned around, don't we?
Sure seems like it.
It's like we're here, but everything's wrong.
Yeah.
You know, I don't mean it. I sometimes feel very negative because, in a sense, we do live in the most amazing, beautiful place. Even when you just think about the trees and all these things, but around us, there's just so much ugliness. People are so ugly.
Well,
inside,
I think a lot of
not ugly faces, just ugly inside.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is that we're so concentrated in places like cities, and so you really not only lose your sense of connection, but you get obsessed with what left of the world is living, which is just the people. So you're just kind of looking at other people, and it's kind of a rat race sort of thing. And I mean, I was looking at a lot of John Smith Globalize videos recently, and he and all those people with him are doing amazing things. But you look at the cities and it's completely paved, and if there's even a tree, it's just coming out of nothing. It's just there's nothing joining the tree. There's no family of plants around the tree. It's just the tree just coming out of a hole in the pavement, and there's no other greenery or anything like that. And like in permaculture, what we call permaculture guilds, which is like if you were to plant a tree, you really think of planting a mini ecosystem. So, or, a popular term in gardening would be companion planting. And plants really, they don't compete as much as they cooperate. And a lot of times people think, oh, well, you got to have a plant singular so it gets all of the nutrients and gets all of the water or whatever, but they really cooperate more than they compete. And most of their growing comes from the air and the sun, and it's not actually from the soil. And what they get from the soil really is a cooperation between the life in the soil and where it's connected, the roots and all that stuff, the soil life. So yeah, it just struck me as these cities are, they really remove any sort of connection to Earth, with as an obvious attempt to completely disconnect you and program you and get you into that sort of rat race mentality, that sort of mob mentality.
Sorry, I couldn't get my button. Do you think that a lot of people need to know who they are, first of all? Because without that, you can never get on any of these journeys, can you? So the first thing is you need to know who you are as a person.
Yeah, that's one thing I wanted to bring up, is that some of us are just designed to always be unsure. Some of us will never really connect with ourselves, and it's just the way they are. Like, some of us are made to be followers. Some of us are just like some of us are made to lead or teach, or so it's not really a one size fits all answer. But yeah, I do agree, for the most part, we should all really do a lot of self-reflection, stop, think, or meditate, like they say. Yeah.
We've talked about it quite often, that as you get older, you just don't have this time and space, or you've got to actually have it, but we don't realise that a lot of people are running around. They just don't realise they don't think. That's why we're where we are, is because there's not enough time to think. Because if they started to think, then they would see things differently.
Yeah, exactly. It's become so obvious these days. You really wonder why some people can't see it. Another thing is like in nature loves to balance itself out. Like, you see weeds, or what they call weeds, which is just pioneering plants, kind of. They come in and they'll take over desolate areas, and start repairing the damage done, whether it's by man or not. And you kind of see the same thing happening with people. So seems to me, the worse things get, the more out of balance it gets, the more each generation starts to produce the people that are really drawn to ideas or ways of fixing things. So that might, and the way that plays out is multiple angles. For instance, if you were a really programmed or indoctrinated person and you're into what people might say the normal life, which is go to job, all the conventional normal stuff, then you might see a lot of the newer generations as not doing what they need to, or misbehaving or whatever, and that might just be an expression of those generations really having the drive to do something different to fix some of these problems. So
yeah, and obviously we're waiting for Aaron to come on. He said he'll be on in a minute, and he's someone maybe with some more ideas that you'd like to hear in a minute when he comes on. And yeah, he said 5 minutes. So again, he's got solutions.
Can I say something?
No, go Astral.
I think as I've grown older, I've come to the conclusion that this life, it is about, you know, just learning, about being here, understanding, and, you know, we're going to have good times, we're going to have bad times for sure. And some of us will have children, some of us won't. You know, we're going to experience all these different aspects of life. And that is part of this life. That's why we're now mortal, you know. We're going to die one day. Let's all face it. That's inevitable. And I've come to the realization that whilst we're here just to learn. We're here just to learn as much as we can, because when this realm, this existence is over, and when I mean over, finished, we're not going to come back. Some might not be finished with it, and, you know, they may come back. Those that can understand what I'm saying. But when we're finished here, we're finished, and then we're going on to a different plane. We're never going to experience, you know, pain again, or anger, or, you know, envy, or greed, or, you know, all these 7 deadly sins, you know. We won't feel that again. And I think that's why we're here now. We're here as mortals to feel that, and then we're going to ascend into a higher, you know, dimension, because this is only the beginning, kind of thing, you know. I yield the floor, Karen.
That's all right, Astral. You can talk a bit more.
that's the big mystery, isn't it?
Yeah. Are you doing this with other people, or are you just doing this by yourself, really? You know, it's your realization.
As far as like permaculture and just natural living and stuff, it's right now I'm doing it with family. You know, I try to get friends involved, but, you know, you can't push people to do stuff, and they have their own lives. So, and right now we're kind of separated by distance. So you know, hopefully at some point, what I need to do is take a while and get things really developed and have something obvious, so I can bring people and show them rather than just tell them. Because if you just tell people, they may or may not get it, but if you show them, it's in their face. It's really obvious.
But a lot of people, they don't listen or want to know, do they?
Yeah, they're you know, they're on their own path. I can't force them to do anything, nor do I want to.
More like that, weren't we? Because I don't know about where you are in America, but, you know, my grandparents, they grew things. They grew vegetables. They grew their own. Which people keep messaging me on Facebook, sorry. They grew things, which we don't now. Even me, it's all wrapped in plastic, and I go and buy it from the supermarket.
Yeah.
So So, you know, we had Jimmy, his name is, and he does microgreens and he sells them to restaurants. He's got some land which he does it on, but he made a little video for me to show that you can grow your own. You just need a windowsill. Do it with microgreens. Just start growing bits of your own.
Yeah, and an easier thing than microgreens would be the step before that, which is sprouts. So you literally just sprout the seed and then eat the sprouts. Microgreens is probably the next step. They're both really easy, but yeah, you can basically do that anywhere. There's tons of ideas for even balconies or windowsills. Yeah, I mean, any little bit helps.
Yeah, because obviously we, you know, even me, you know, I'm lazy as well. I go to the supermarket. I'm just saying it's the mindset they've got us in, and they don't, you know, don't really seem to want us helping ourselves, do they? My son was growing some tomatoes. He's well happy with himself because he's actually growing some tomatoes. What I mean is he's growing some tomatoes, but he's well over the moon. He's growing just tomatoes. But, you know, we should be growing more.
Yeah, as they say, food is medicine. And if you're growing your own medicine, the medicine really works the best if you have a relationship with it. So if you put energy into it, or I should say, what energy you put into it, you'll receive back.
Yeah, it's having a slightly different mindset, isn't it, about things?
Yeah,
we're very narcissistic and egotistical where it is right now. So I'm saying the shift is off. When you really wake up, you realise it's so ugly, including most of our friends and family.
Yeah, well, some of it's perspective. I mean, there's lots of negative things, but I mean, I can see the good. Like, I can see the good even in the quote zombies. It's somewhere deep inside of them, and they, you know, it's just waiting to be awoken, like they say.
What made you want to go this way then?
Honestly, I don't really know. It's just, like I said, maybe it's either a consideration of things through the collective consciousness, or maybe I've already been here, and so I kind of just know where to go from here, or what to do, or I don't know exactly how it all works.
Yeah, it's a bit like trying to get to the end of the rainbow, isn't it? There's never an ending. I think a lot of people have realised that, even researching or looking into flat Earth. When you think, I've got nowhere and I know nothing much. We still don't even know what the sun and the moon really are. And you can't just say, yeah, like specifically the stars start this high up, even though they are not that far away at all. But, you know, we'd like to maybe know where the edge is, or all these things. We don't know any of these things. We don't even know if our history is correct. Like, once you get into Martin Leakey with the fact that he's seeing all these drawings which are hundreds of years old, and they're able to map out and do like a CT scan in drawing.
Wow.
They've got the whole, in 1712, they'd mapped out the whole nervous system of the human body. So it doesn't quite put them in the place where they said that we were some sort of, I don't know. And, you know, like he's proved in old photographs, etchings and things, they're actually still showing the things we still have in the road, which are those, you know, the wires with the electric and telephone on them. Those are still there in these pictures then. So what's happened? We probably haven't moved along as fast as we think we should.
I'll tell you what I think. You've got from when you're born till the day you die to figure out you.
And look who's joined us. Earth Aaron.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Aaron.
Can you guys hear me? Actually, no. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah.
All right.
So, you know, Patricia and Astral, playing permaculture has joined us. And actually, he's looking alternatively at things. So he's very interested in hearing a bit actually about your project because he thinks his stuff overlaps with yours.
Yeah, permaculture. Hello. Really,
Hey.
yeah. So nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. Well, whatever this is, it's not personal meeting, but
yeah, well, hanging out. We're hanging out now.
We're still coming together from across the water. I said we're still coming together from across the water.
Yeah, that's right. All across the plane.
Different time zones, all together, here and now.
Hopefully I don't mess things up. Let me know if I mess things up.
Aaron, you've got a beard.
A what?
A beard.
I've always had a beard. When have I not had a beard?
Yeah, but it's a longer beard. It looks
well,
long.
yeah. I guess, you know, that happens. Time, beard growth.
Only takes a couple of days. Bloody hell.
Yeah. So it goes back.
Permaculture. Do you talk to Aaron at all? By the way, just asking, or is this like the first sort of real bit you've had with? Because maybe you could just before Aaron starts his little bit to explain, because he likes obviously talking about Project Lumen, is that you explain a bit about your permaculture because he might be very interested in it anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the first hangout period, so I haven't talked to anybody. Yeah.
Right. Well, I meant you might be talking to him on Facebook or
no,
YouTube and.
No, not really. I'm not on Facebook at all, but it sounds like you might be familiar with permaculture.
Yeah, I'm definitely familiar. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm really
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you probably have a good idea of what permaculture is. So I don't know if I have to. I mean,
I was kind of listening already, so you know, I kind of got your rundown. I mean, I guess I missed like, so what exactly are you doing in the world, on the world?
Well, for me, it's just, you know, kind of tying my own shoes before I start running sort of deal, putting on my own oxygen mask, taking care of my own stuff before I really start pushing it and showing people examples. But I mean, I'm a certified designer. I haven't really done that many projects, but I do recognize the potential of at least that way of thinking. I don't have to formally, or I don't push formally calling things permaculture. It doesn't have to be called permaculture, but you know, just the sustainable or beyond sustainable approach to creating systems for you know, for the world, or for taking care of Earth and the people and everything in it.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Yeah, I mean, I pretty much do the same thing. You know, that's really where I started, was looking into permaculture and working with Earth very directly. You know, I've had years where I was living on the Earth and kind of just foraging and living off the Earth in that way. And so I'm very into natural living. And then I've seen, you know, I've gotten really immersed in technology, and I've been seeing the relationship of the two, or the potential relationship of the two, where we can make our modern society based on permaculture principles, you know, where we're really living sustainably, we're living in harmony with the Earth, where we are living in peace and harmony with each other. And I see that all as like kind of branches of permaculture, you know, making a culture that is permanent, really, instead of the one that we have now, which is really just by all measures. It's like, how could we possibly sustain this society the way it's been going? It's just gonna run into the ground. And what are we gonna do then? Well, let's do permaculture.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I definitely agree. So as far as the technology, how are you integrating that?
Originally, I was really into sustainable energy technologies, using various things that we already have, like wind power, solar power, tidal power, and then various kinds of growing technologies, like using like silo grow systems or vertical gardens, or just various concepts of growing more efficiently and sustainably, so that we are able to provide for ourselves, and as a beginning, at least, be able to provide for ourselves, and then we can expand out and to be able to kind of make sure that everyone's got what they need as far as food and clean water, and also with water, like pulling water from the atmosphere, or atmosphere, I guess I should say, and be able to purify it, use water as an energy source, which is a lesser known energy source, but it's very viable. But then I've been getting a lot into software, and how by building certain things like web applications that can help facilitate the world to live in a more sustainable fashion, whether it's self-governance or monetarily, like all these currencies are pretty not sustainable. I think we're seeing that with the fiat systems and the central banks, and that's just all pretty much a giant scheme to impoverish the great majority of the world. And that's ridiculous, because the earth is abundant naturally, so why would we think that we're impoverished? Or I was born into a family that had no money, so I somehow deserve to be poor. No, I don't think so. Or even the college system, you go to college and you think that you're going to get this good job, and you pay all this money to go to school, and then you can't get a job, or the job you get is flipping burgers, and it's just like, that's not sustainable, it's not abundant, and it's not natural. It's the society is in a very unnatural state. And so, I see that we can use technology to pull out of that, to create alternatives that essentially, they give us what we need. They give us the ability to kind of stand up for ourselves, because what's really happened here is you have this few specific powers from even hundreds or thousands of years ago that started implementing their power, and they started taking the power perceptibly from the masses through things like royalty or class hierarchy and various political structures that lock us into like this class system. And that basically just breeds greed and usury and all these various systemic problems that don't need to be. They really don't. Like, it's amazing how easy it would be for us to just switch from these old, outdated systems. But I think the masses are very indoctrinated and mind controlled, and so this is definitely what I'm running up against, and you are probably too. I mean, I know we all are. It's just it's like, you'd think people would want to wake up. You'd think that people would want a better world, but from experience, it seems that we're the outcasts because we want a better world, and really people just they're comfortable with their enslavement. It's like the what's the name of that? The disease where you're like, you fall in love, or you become comfortable with your captors.
Stockholm syndrome.
Stockholm
Stockholm
syndrome.
syndrome.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, Stockholm syndrome. Exactly. I think the world is just a giant Stockholm syndrome right now, and they think that we need to have kings and queens and presidents and these various centralized governing systems that, you know, really don't serve the masses. They don't serve the public. They just tend to serve the elite, and that's it. And, you know, somehow we've been convinced that this is the way it is. We have no choice. We have no power, and we just have to accept it. And that's really the only recourse, is just to accept the way things are. And I don't. Personally, I do not accept that. And that's why I do what I do. You know, I'm building these various projects like Project Lumen and Iron Coin and a whole lot of others that are all geared towards giving us alternative infrastructure and solutions. And I absolutely want to be creating not just one, but multiple communities that are living intentionally with the earth, in harmony with the earth, that have the basic modern conveniences, you know, warm showers and fresh food and all that, but still are, you know, living in harmony with the earth. I think it's very doable, and that's my aim. You know, I'd like to live in one personally. I have lived in intentional communities throughout my life, and I've seen that just the challenge is a lot of times it's just a little bubble, you know. People want to live off the grid and have their bubble, and that's fine, and it's definitely a better life. I will admit that wholeheartedly, and so I recommend it to everyone to do that. At the same time, I was in those positions, and I realized, you know, how is this really changing the world? You have so many that are still impoverished and, you know, dying of hunger, and there's a lot of crimes against humanity being committed that aren't being addressed. You know, and the whole flat earth thing, I mean, that's monumental, really, in that regard, and just shows how entrapped and indoctrinated we've become, and that, you know, something needs to be done. People need to stand up to these bullies and these charlatans that have been parading around acting like they own the place, quite literally, or they own us, even worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you want to make things more reachable to the average person, or be able to influence that sort of larger crowd, probably. Yeah,
absolutely. That's why I put together cryptocurrency, and, you know, I'm trying to kind of get it out there to, I don't know, for lack of a better word, the normies, people who wouldn't really consider a lot of the other things we're talking about, but might, you know, be interested in a good investment or a technology that will, you know, like social network, like, you know, provide a new Facebook or a new social platform, that people, you know, people are into that, right? You don't have to be a flat earther or any specific walk of life to want to use a platform that's going to be enable one to connect to their friends and family, enable people to share themselves without worry of censorship, which we're experiencing massive problems with censorship right now, with Facebook and Twitter and all these other platforms. You know, it's getting worse and worse. And then money, you know, it's just it's a massive problem really in society, that money is just there's such a wealth gap. And that's extremely unnatural. You know, if you look at nature, like, when in nature do you see a squirrel just hoarding all of the nuts? So there's this one squirrel that eats all the nuts, and then these other squirrels don't get any nuts because the one squirrel has all of them. It just doesn't happen. You know, you don't have that imbalance in nature. And so the fact that we do in society is a major red flag. It should be. You know, it might not be, but it should be.
Yeah, that's sounds like some great stuff going on. Some good ideas.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I've been working on this stuff most of my life, even most of my lives, but you know, I'm up, you know, we're all up against a great challenge in this life, because we're sort of forerunners. We're on the crest of an awakening. We're definitely challenging the status quo, and so therefore, you know, I would have thought, and I did think years ago, that people would be really into this stuff, and
yeah, me too.
It's been amazing. Yeah, it's amazing the resistance we receive. Like, it's amazing, not only resistance, but outright like sabotage. You know, people actually they don't want us to succeed with these things because they are so comfortable and with their Stockholm syndrome, you know.
Yeah,
it's amazing. It really is. But you know, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I definitely think since a lot of people tend to be followers and stuff, it seems like we need to start setting examples for them to follow.
Exactly. Very, very true. Yeah. I've been talking with some people that are really into, you know, living that example, being that example, and more. I think we're moving towards creating some groups, some organizations that will, for example, create a film studio that produces films that are based on truth and based on the divine aspects of masculine, feminine, and, you know, to basically be able to give people good role models. I think that's one of the most lacking things in this world is good role models. You know, we see all these people on the big screen, and then we even hear about their lives behind the scenes, and it's not something to look up to. It's not something to aspire to, and even some of them, it's just disgusting. You know.
Yeah.
And so that's big lacking. You know, Hollywood is extremely corrupt, and so I've been working with some people and working on these projects to basically be able to revolutionize the film and music industries, where we can get really quality things out there to the people, and even get funding. You know, funding to be able to put into it, because that's one of the main challenges that we face is that, you know, we haven't been hoarding gold for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So we don't have that resource behind us, you know.
We should also be able to influence, you know, education, have some sort of like a school, university with truth. None of this
absolutely
pseudoscience, and well, science is just shit, isn't it? It's
most of it.
to have.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the natural sciences, that's where it all stemmed from originally. And that's where it should go back to. That's where we should bring it back to. You know, it's through observation of nature and reasoning and logic that's science. That's the real science. You know, what they call science nowadays is just complete. It's just, oh, let's make a few assumptions, let's put them in textbooks, and voila, we have scientific paradigm. No.
Yeah. I kind of lean towards the idea that we don't really need school at all. I mean, once you get things like permaculture out there as common knowledge, a lot of it is just living your life and learning from experience, learning from your parents. And I mean, I think there will be a transition period, and you can go into fields like apprentice for something like engineering or whatever is needed, but I don't really see a formal need for schooling as it is now.
I tend to agree with you. You know, if you look at the origins of our modern academic system, it really stems from the church, and really all that stems from just a desire to indoctrinate the masses into these various systems, these various constructs. You know, if we were to just allow the children to learn naturally, enable the children, encourage the children to teach each other, and then the parents, of course, are very involved in that learning and growing process. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. It's not about a formal school system or these, you know, credentials that everyone's trying to achieve. It's about learning and growing. And if we emphasize that, then that becomes just our way of life, which, you know, I think a lot of us kind of have gotten there through our own accord, where it's just that, you know, we've learned that, well, I desire wisdom. I desire to be able to see things from greater perspectives. And I desire that, you know, my previous belief systems are challenged so that I can grow into newer and greater systems of belief or even knowing. And that's all very natural. You know, if you look at the Native Americans or just any indigenous peoples, that's how they were. You know, they would have the elders who were the most wise, and they'd be imparting their wisdom upon the youth. But then the whole system is really about, you know, you go as a boy, you go through your hunting rites of passage, and you know, that was more about developing a relationship with the deer, for example, and nature directly. You know, you're living in nature and learning from nature. I mean, nature's the best teacher, easily. You know, if you just put kids out in nature, you know, that's their schoolroom right there. You know, they don't need these textbooks and stuff. I mean, the textbooks are all wrong anyway. You know, we need to do away with them and kind of start over. So,
yeah, I definitely agree.
A giant flat textbook to work with here.
Yeah, but the ridiculous thing is this, that we have been talking about this for years now, that, you know, school is wrong. They're indoctrinating our children. I have children. They go to school and they're just learning things that don't hold up in reality. They're just learning lies, you know, and I can't get over it, you know, it's not good. But yet they continue to do it.
Yeah, once you're done with all that, you have to essentially unlearn most of it to get back to zero, to get back to square one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, how much time have we spent unlearning what we did learn? We spent, you know, I spent 12 years in school, and I don't know, it's been 20 plus years of unlearning all that. And I think that was one of my saving graces, actually. I was very resistant to school since the very beginning of school, kindergarten. I remember being very opposed. I felt like it was prison. And turns out I was right. But, you know, and so I think because of that, I never really applied myself in school. I applied myself outside of school. Like, I was very into learning, but not necessarily what they were trying to teach me. And I was very into like developing skills with like music and science, but not necessarily what you know, was being pushed on me. And because of that, I maintained a certain independence of mind. And so I think once because I tried to go to college a few times, you know, I went for a few years, and I really just came to see the mass indoctrination from within it. You know, I saw that going on at intense degrees, and then I guess degrees, pun unintended, but you know, and then you graduate, or I didn't graduate, but I dropped out, and I saw even more as I kind of distanced myself from that, how bad that situation is. How, like, you know, if you go through and you do graduate, now you've got that attachment that, oh, well, I don't want that to be for naught, so let's just go ahead and assume and hope and pray that that school, that educational system that I'm in $100,000 debt for, was worth it. Because otherwise, you know, what's the point? And what's the point even going on? I mean, I think a lot of people are going to have a hard time as a lot of this stuff comes out and is coming out. You know, they're going to really struggle with that kind of stuff, where they, you know, they've invested their whole lives into these lies unknowingly. And so I think a lot of our job is to kind of lay it to them softly, and have compassion with these people, so that you know, we can help them, because it's traumatizing. It really is. I mean, I went through it even with just realizing, because I was really into physics. I was really into physics. Albert Einstein was one of my heroes, and you know, I had studied most of his stuff very extensively, and I just started realizing that it was all propaganda. Not all of it, but most of it. And that was traumatizing to me. That was probably the hardest thing for me. Okay, NASA's lying. I knew NASA's been lying ever since the moon landing. That wasn't hard for me to stomach. But what was hard was that people like Einstein may have known about this, and then, and it's debatable how much they knew and how much like Einstein was spreading that propaganda, or the propaganda was just spread around his works. But at the same time, you look at the other various geniuses that were alive that got no notoriety, and you're like, well, why was it that they would have, been brushed on the rug, or Tesla as opposed to Edison, and all these various cases. And then you have modern day things where people have discovered water power, and then they all of a sudden get food poisoning. What's going on there? Well, obvious what's going on there now, but it took a while for me to really accept that the deception went this deep. I had to do the math, honestly. Before I even came out and talked to anyone about flat Earth, I spent quite a while just doing my own math and looking through the textbooks, the physics textbooks that I had, and studying the assumptions, the underlying assumptions that are made in various theories, and things that are taught as fact, things that are taught as law, like Newton's law of gravity. Well, there's no law there. It's a weak hypothesis that was disproven. And that's the same with all these, like the heliocentric theory. No, it's not even a theory. It's a hypothesis that's been disproven long ago, and people don't admit that. And so you see these physicists nowadays just go down this like endless rabbit hole of indoctrination, and it gets so deep. You get so deep in that hole that like you don't want to admit that, oh, you might be in the wrong hole. You might have stuck your head down the wrong hole, and now you'd have to come all the way back up that hole and then down another hole that then, includes this whole other series of just, mind fucks that are going to completely change your paradigm. And so that's hard, and so many people are in that position. They don't want to admit it. But then I watch these physicists nowadays talk about this stuff, and it's just like, it's painful to watch. It's painful to watch these grown adults that have been through, some of them 10 years of school, and then been practicing in the field, or practicing, applying their education, but it's all theoretical, and it's all, and they just don't want to look at the most simple things like compound angular momentum, like the fact that if the Earth is spinning and orbiting and orbiting and orbiting, well, we would experience all this fluctuation, maybe a complex wave of gravity. It wouldn't just be like, gravity doesn't just have one force to counteract. It has a dynamic series of forces that are all on this interplay. And then you have the elliptical orbit of Earth, where the Earth speeds up during certain times of the year and slows down during other times. And you have the variance, even just on the spinning Earth, where the North Pole would be 0 miles per hour and the equator is 1,000 miles an hour. It's insane that people look past all of that. Like, forget about the shape for a second. The whole thing really comes back to, is the Earth moving? Because that was the debate. The debate of whether it was round or not, I mean, that has not been as prominent historically. The real debate was whether the Earth is moving, because if the Earth is moving, then it could hypothetically be going around the sun. But if you can't demonstrate any evidence that it's moving, then that disproves that hypothesis, that it's moving around the sun. And so we just have to disregard that entire theory. And they just don't want to do it. It's come up time and time again. Nicholson, Morley, and Sagnac, they all proved that the Earth isn't moving. Einstein even says, he concluded that there's no optical experiment that can demonstrate the movement of the Earth. And but still, people don't want to admit it. They don't want to really be honest with themselves, and so they continue to live the lie, and that's sad. But I think people are waking up, and I don't think it's gonna be as hard as people are afraid of, to wake up to that. And I think a natural result of that is to trust the earth more and respect the earth more. You know, part of the way they've gotten away with all this pollution and various kind of crimes against earth and the life on earth is through this deception. You know, if they convince us that we're kind of a meaningless speck of dust floating through this nothing vacuum that has no intelligence or awareness to it, then it's much easier to convince us that our lives don't matter, and therefore you might as well just be a slave, you know, and just be okay with it. And we might as well just be okay with damaging the earth and all the life on it, you know. And so people are. They're complacent. They're cynical. You know, nothing happens when we die. We just vaporize into dust. And that's it for our existence, because we were only just a series of neurons firing. And that was all there was to life. Goodbye. You know, that's the that's the brainwashed like notion that we've all been put into, even like most Christianity, you know, or even religions in general. Like Hindus and Christians that I've talked to generally have a similar belief system, even though it goes against what's in their books. Doesn't matter, you know. They still have a similar belief system that, you know, it's just materialistic viewpoint on life, and that's it. That's all there is. And science is just completely materialistic. There's no accounting for the consciousness. Even though you look at modern quantum physics, that shows that our minds affect the experiment, and they don't want to admit that either. You know, they brush that under the rug and try to cover it up with all this wave particle duality stuff, which I think is bogus as well. I think that, you know, energy is moves in waves, and prove me wrong. Show me anywhere where that's not the case. And no one can, you know, no one will ever be able to do that, because it doesn't. It's all energy waves. And what is that energy? It's consciousness. You know, call it what you want, call it God, call it creator, call it, you know, Brahma, anything, doesn't matter, because it doesn't really have a name unless a human chooses to attribute a name to it. But the reality is it's still the same thing for everyone. And you know, we can try to deny it, but ultimately we can't. And that's what the earth is too. The earth is a natural emanation from that. And then permaculture, bringing it back to that, is really just the art and science of living in harmony with that natural intelligence.
Yeah.
You know?
Would you agree that we live in a place where you can't really have a controlled experiment? It's all kind of miraculous, and it's all dynamic, and I hear people talking about how the scientific method is the best thing we have, but I kind of think everything's anecdotal and everything is sort of unique, and so there is no real perfect controlled experiment, and it's all kind of subjective, a subjective viewpoint of the objective, kind of. Yeah. Like you were saying with the quantum mechanics, sort of.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and I agree. Yeah, I actually kind of take that all the way. I would say that our reality is an emanation from ourselves. So everything we experience is our creation. Now, that's sort of like, well, and then there's the dichotomy, which is that we also have a collective shared reality. And so we are each creating our reality, but then we are also creating we're creating our collective reality. And,
yeah.
You know, and so therefore, like, if you're going to conduct an experiment, then you're going to generally see the results that you intend to see. If you have a bias, which most scientists do, let's be honest.
Yeah.
You know, they see what they want to see. And that's very known and true. Like, you know, good scientists will admit that. But at the same time, then, and I think you can conduct experiments that give you results, and you can collect that data, and you can get closer and closer to the truth, but you can never really 100% identify I don't believe that a human can determine a law. Like, we can't say that this is a law, even though it might happen every single time we observe. Well, there's still the possibility it won't. You know, there's always the possibility the sun won't rise. But, you know, we tend to think of it as a law, like, oh, the sun will be back tomorrow every single time. And so far, so good, right?
Yeah.
But there's still the possibility that it might not. And that is the sort of the magical nature of reality. And I think the more advanced we become with our own consciousness, with our self-awareness, and our society, and the more we kind of break away these shackles on our mind that have been containing us for so long, the closer we get to realizing that reality, that we are truly creating our realities with our minds, and there's no real distinction between the observed and the observer.
Yeah.
And that's just a perceived thing, because that was the fall into ignorance. You know, was that we fell from knowing all this, knowing we are one consciousness, to kind of this perceived separation, where now we are we're in the illusion, we're in the Maya, and we're perceiving that I can look at something and it's different than me, or I can look at another person and that they're different than me. And that's not really the truth. That's just the perceived state. And the only reason we're perceiving it that way is because of thousands of years of indoctrination. Because this was the result of a massive plan to kind of, like, you know, separate ourselves from each other, from our true nature, see how far we could get, and still come back. That's what I believe, actually. And so essentially, you know, if we didn't make it back, then we would reset, which that might be the explanation for the floods that have happened in the past. But I feel very strongly that we are not going to get the flood this time. We're instead, we are waking up, and we're choosing to wake up ultimately to our unity, which will mean that we will return to the earth. My concern, however, these days is that there's kind of like, you know, everything's a double-edged sword, and technology especially. And you have the proper use of technology, you have the improper use of technology. And, you know, the proper use would be like using for agriculture, to be able to, like, grow more abundant plants and more stably or sustainably grow all our own food, and purify the water, and be able to extrapolate energy from our surroundings, be able to communicate across vast distances, be able to travel without polluting, without, you know, causing harm on the earth. That would be all proper use of technology. And that's very potential. We have that ability right now. But what we see is a very improper use of technology happening, being encouraged, being promoted. Like, and you have, like, virtual reality, for example, which is just, it's another step of entrapment. They're trying to get us further entrapped away from our true nature. A lot of, like, all this AI, a lot of the use of AI is very much to control us, to monitor us, and to keep us enslaved in these various systems. And there's proper use of AI as well, which would be to create more sustainable systems, governance, and you know, societies that are augmented by artificial intelligence and deep learning and various techniques. And so I'm like watching. I've been watching these two paths, and I see very little support for the proper use of technology. I see a tremendous amount of support for the improper use. And so that's really my main thing. That's why a lot of my projects are focused around technology. And I see Project Lumen it's about light technology, and that's what I would say it is um, technology that is sustainable and that is going to um, augment our society. It's going to assist us to live in harmony with Earth. You know, all those things are proper use or light-based use of technology. And then you have the shadow technology, which is secretism and invasion of privacy and power over others. Anywhere where these things are being applied, or whether it's abuse to people or to the Earth itself or to any life on Earth, all of that is like the shadow side of it, and that's where we're at. You know, unfortunately, it's not it's a rude awakening, I guess, in that way, to realize that this is the condition we're in. But I'm very optimistic at the same time. I'm very optimistic. I see that the human spirit is strong, and I mean, it's the strongest thing there is. We have, you know, and so we will prevail in that way, and we will bring about a renaissance of mind, of technology, and people really learning and growing, seeing life as an opportunity to learn and grow, and be able to really live in harmony with each other on Earth. We'll get there. I don't claim to know how long it'll take, but we'll definitely get there.
Yeah, I definitely think that if people were to start connecting back with Earth, they would start to realize what kinds of technology is actually even appropriate or needed. Like, for example, I live in a very hot climate in the United States, and I don't even have AC, and it's not needed if you design your building the right way. And also, people aren't even experiencing the weather. People aren't experiencing summer or winter or any of that. They're in essentially a life support system inside a building. And you may find a lot of cycles in your body really require those changes of season, and you feel a lot healthier, and you'll start to get some instincts back on how to live and adapt to those situations. And I definitely encourage people not only connect to Earth, but start minimizing and prioritizing all aspects of their life, really. And like things like travel, like how much do we just mindlessly drive around just for things that aren't needed? Like how much resources are we wasting? How many things are we killing? If you go on some of these country roads, not where it's already been desolated, or not where all life has been extinguished, like cities, you'll find that a lot of these roads are just like lined with bodies. I mean, like it's and then how many of those beings were killed just so you could, you know, go to the fast food restaurant or whatever it is, something really dumb. I mean, we're living so unconscious that we're not thinking about anything around us. But definitely, like there's courses that are tied in with some permaculture design courses called Appropriate Technology, and it's like one of the biggest resource hogs is heating in winter, and there's a lot of pushing towards old technologies like rocket mass heaters or things like that, where you can essentially heat your whole house with just sticks you pick up. Really not much wood at all, or a whole lot less than you were burning before. And so there's lots of things we have to get back to, and I think we'll find that that sort of harmonious existence can be obtained pretty quickly if we just make the choice or change our mindset or way of thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's how I feel too. Like, you know, this doesn't need to take a long time. Go on, Kurt.
Sorry, yeah, just agreeing. Sorry, just agreeing.
I didn't catch that.
Oh, she was just agreeing.
I was just agreeing.
Yeah, you know, we can do this like immediately. You know, there's really no need to delay, and yeah, all the technology's there, and it. Yeah, I agree with you. Also, what do I call you, Plain or Mr. Permaculture?
Either one, I don't care.
But I agree with you. Like, you know, yeah, people don't go outside. They don't experience the outside. It's like this. They're like vampires, and like, you know,
Yeah.
like they don't want to like experience the outside. And you know, I will admit I'm kind of guilty of that lately. But that's because I've been working on all this stuff, and so I've been more and more. But I get outside every day. I take walks, and I try to watch the sunset every day as much as I can, or as much as it's visible. And you know, I think it's amazing to me how few people notice anything that goes on in the natural world. Like in the last couple of weeks, I've seen these really strange flying objects in the sky, but no one else sees them. You know, they're up there, and you can see them if you look, but no one else sees them because everyone's just like nose to the grindstone, looking down at the sidewalk as they're walking, or they walk by a tree, they just won't notice it. It's saddening, really. It's saddening. I mean, the nature is beautiful, animals, life, even insects, beautiful. You know, but we miss all that, and we just put them all in these categories of like uncomfortable nature. Oh yeah, that's like when I go camping and I don't like it. You know, or I'll camp in a tent as long as it has mosquito netting. You know.
Yeah.
The more awake you are, the more like, you know, like I really appreciate the trees a lot more now.
Yeah. Trees are the shit.
Yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
I think people need to get back to describing everything, and instead of getting sucked into these labels or categories. And yeah, I agree with the trees. I could definitely stare at a tree probably the rest of my life and even learn a whole lot.
Yeah. Well, I say now that I think that all the wisdom of the world is contained within the trees. I think they're kind of the Akashic records, if you will. And so, you know, you can just kind of commune with a tree and learn so much. And people just look at you like, why is that guy just staring at that tree? But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they think. They don't understand.
I have a video of Jeff Lawton doing a permaculture lesson on patterns, and he calls the master pattern essentially a core, like similar to like a apple core, and it also can be interpreted as a tree design.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's very, very interesting.
Yeah. A tree is essentially a toroid, right?
Yeah. Yeah, same thing.
I think everything is that shape, pretty much.
Yeah, like if you looked at the whole tree, not just what's above, but what's below, like the roots and all that stuff, it's essentially that pattern.
Yeah, as above, so below, and just like I love the many metaphors that come from trees, like We use a lot in code, actually. It's funny, like there's in open source code, there's like the trunk of a project, or there's the branches, and oh, what else? There's a number of little kind of metaphors that are used just in describing this, you know, and look at all the places where we have branches of government, branches of education, you know, that's all tree vocabulary. And there's a reason for that, because everything is pretty much like a tree. I mean, even the human body is pretty much the same as a tree that moves, a tree that walks and talks. That's what we are.
Yeah. There's a lot of interesting stuff with language. I remember Bill Mollison talking about cultures and their language. Like, for instance, the Inuits have a ton of words for snow, and they all represent something really detailed or intricate or unique about the snow. And apparently there's a lot of cultures that have words centered around the ocean or sea. And I think he said there's not as many around forests, but maybe that's been lost or separated from us.
Yeah, maybe they didn't encounter forests as much because it's so cold. No.
Yeah, maybe.
That's kidding. Yeah, I mean, language is, you know, that's another tool that they've used. I mean, it's technology that has been used against us at this point. I would say, like, a lot of the English language, especially, is really just set up to cast spells, even though we don't realize it.
Yeah.
You know? And so there's so much stuff that's just backwards or inverted, or there's a lot of words that are the same word for this and that. Like, to know, K-N-O-W, is like one of the great aspirations, but then no, N-O, negative. It's, you know, negating. And so they do that kind of stuff on purpose, you know, to confuse our minds from the very get-go. As soon as we start learning this language, it's contradictory, it's intuitively contradictory. And so we just kind of grow up, we learn the language, and we are already confused. And it takes us away from our spiritual nature, from the ability to telepathically communicate, which we all had and we still have. Technically, it's become very dormant. And I think going back to, like, those education schools, you know, Astral was talking about, that's what a lot of that's going to be about, is really kind of forming a new language, one that is in alignment with our ability to communicate directly. And eventually we'll get to the point where we won't even use words anymore. You know, I think the fall of the Tower of Babylon was kind of where it wasn't just that we were all given these separate languages, it was that language became verbal. Before then, it was all telepathic, and we just communicated directly, and you couldn't lie in that context. You cannot lie when you're communicating telepathically. You can only lie when you use words, verbal words, because then you have free will, and you can, you know, use whatever words you want to use.
Yeah, and the spells and the spelling.
Spells and spelling.
Yeah. Typically, I mean, it's getting real bad with what people are now calling triggers. Someone will use one word, and rather you asking what they are thinking or what they really mean, it just sets you off like some sort of mind control trigger.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, like, I mean, it's even funny to go from, okay, telepathic communication to verbal communication, and then to text messages. You know,
Yeah.
Like, nothing can be communicated through text messages. Just like, you know, say, hey, how are you doing? And the person will be like, what's he mean by that? You know, like, well, I meant, how are you doing? You know, but people can just screw it because you can't hear even the tone of their voice, and so we're losing even more. It's like we're just losing more and more of that direct communication,
Yeah.
which is sad. But I'm again still optimistic. Yeah. If I'm not optimistic, then I don't know. You know, I might as well give up. But
yeah, I find a lot of times when using computers, just being around that sort of frequency or technology, it kind of gets you in that negative mindset. So I can see how a lot of times people just go straight to being angry, or, you know, you can see how it sets off people, just the simplest things.
yeah, I get angry at my computer quite a bit. Yeah, that's pretty much who I have my arguments with these days. And it's mostly, it's not even my computer. It's these various websites, because I'm a web developer. And so I just see I don't know how to say this. I see shitty software everywhere. And it's amazing to me. It's just like, I don't mean to be mean to anyone. There's another one, mean to be mean. But it's just like, people are so dumbed down, and it shows. It shows in everything. It shows in our film, in our music. It shows in all the media. It shows in all the websites and all the platforms that we're using. It's like no one really knows what they're doing. I've worked in various corporations that they're all just, it's all haphazard. It's just people running around clueless. Everyone's clueless, and a few people have a little more of a clue, and they're usually the ones that get paid less to get walked on. You know, ironically, it's like the ones who have less of a clue but are willing to aggressively assert their dominance. Those are the ones who get paid well and get to make the decisions in these various corporations. But they shouldn't be making the decisions because they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And you know, that's like pandemic. It's just all over the place. In every industry, in every walk of life, whether it's politics or entertainment or education, you know, and it's problematic, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, you know, is to really bring about some alternative solutions that I believe will ultimately grow into this. Like, it'll give us the space to be able to grow a whole new culture based on honesty, based on light, and that will then reach out into various industries like entertainment. And then watch out, as soon as we start creating film that's actually entertaining again and interesting, I think that's really when this stuff is going to take off, because people will be like, oh, where did this come from? You know, I thought Hollywood was done. It's just, we were doomed to have nothing but shitty movies for the rest of our lives. I think there's a lot of people that think that, you know, and same with music. And they just kind of accept the pop culture is the pinnacle of creative expression, and they're so wrong, but they don't really have much to compare it to, or nothing that they have to compare it to is really out there enough, you know, in the spotlight to be able to get recognition. And so it just kind of is swept under the rug. And that's why I think really the key is, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of technology we can bring to this and a lot of awakened minds, but really the key is to really figure out how to fund these initiatives, which is why I've been working with Ironcoin and creating a cryptocurrency that can actually enable these projects to get funded. And the main thing there is like, you know, people want to be able to put if they put money into something, or if they put their time into something, they want that to show for something. They want that to be considered valuable. In society, it's not. You know, you might put a lot of time into something and you get paid very low wage, or it's just not, you're not getting valued what it's worth, or you're an amazingly genius artist or a musician, but you can't even pay your bills because our society generally doesn't support that. It doesn't unless you're willing to sell your soul to Sony or something like that, then you know, then you can succeed. But then you have to compromise in all these various ways. But if you're not willing to sell your soul, which I encourage you not to, then you know it's kind of like, I mean, Godspeed, but it's going to be a struggle because of the current society. But that's not how it should be, and I think we all know that. And so and so then one of the fundamental features or attributes of Iron Coin is that it tracks what people put into things, and then it pays you out accordingly based on what you put into it. This is what you get back, and it'll be more abundant than what you put into it. In the sense that, you know, if you put some money into a project and that project goes on to help the world and bring in some profits or even resource, then you have access to those resources proportionally to what you put in. And that's kind of alignment with the, I don't know, the golden rule, or, you know, as you give, so shall you receive, which is a natural, we can observe that. I mean, energy is neither created nor destroyed. They would say it's a natural law. And so, but in the case, if you look at our modern money system, it's not that way. It's very much the opposite, actually. Like, a lot of times, if you're willing to take more energy, then you're going to get it, because that's the way our society's set up. And that's unnatural, and it's not sustainable, and it's not going to survive. And so it's going to fall. I believe it is falling. A lot's going on in the world right now to suggest that the old ways are just dying off. I think a lot of that's the old players, the old people, the old perpetrators of these various systems are dying off, as well as the new fresh energy coming in, getting to their 30s and really starting to want to see changes, make changes, willing to make changes, not just settle for the same old, you know?
Yeah, I see the allowance of this sort of awakening, especially Flat Earth, to be on platforms like Google or, you know, YouTube, whoever owns this. And I kind of see it as their, like, a last ditch effort to kind of keep people going to them for information.
Yep.
So it kind of, or I should say, how are you attempting to reach people? Is it just kind of online, or what?
Well, I mean, I started a meetup on meetup.com almost 3 years ago. And so we've been getting together quite a bit in person, which I just decided was really important, rather than just doing everything online. And I'm really glad that I did that, because I have met a lot of really awesome people. And in fact, actually, there's like this meetup, kind of like a multi-day, like a week-long meetup going on this guy's property outside of LA. That's, you know, he's doing a lot of permaculture kind of practices, and it's so I'm eager to go out there and see it. Probably do that tomorrow. But so meeting in person is really important. You know, I've also been able to get on to a number of different mainstream appearances. I've been on some interviews and some various shows that have, you know, I've been talking about mostly flat Earth stuff. And so that's been good. I actually have something coming out here soon with Cartoon Network. You know, and a lot of it's kind of hit pieces or borderline hit pieces, but I'm still okay with doing that, because you know, the information getting out there, I believe, is most important. And I'm definitely doing a lot online, mostly online, and most of the things I'm dealing with right now are online.
Some of the things you've been into, Aaron, on the media side.
What about them?
Exciting.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if I should talk about some of these things, but you know, I might be going to the Kennedy Center, and with someone very prominent, and I also might be going to Antarctica with someone very prominent as parts of these various shows. What's that?
Oh, I was gonna say, is the Kennedy Center, is that Florida?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Cape Canaveral, where they shoot all the rockets into the ocean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting, you know. I mean, I don't know. I'm just kind of like along for those rides, and I'm also working with some people. I've met a lot of producers, and there's some people that are really interested in the idea of creating like a whole new culture in Hollywood that's around these principles of like integrity. You know, that's like a strange concept in Hollywood, and you know, like I was just talking about, being able to have projects that people could put in resource and then get paid back. Like, imagine if like just anybody could contribute to a film that's goes on to be a blockbuster, and now they're just getting a portion of those profits. You know, up until now, it's been purely Hollywood execs that get the main portion of those royalties. They kind of hoard access, and even the actors a lot of times aren't getting much, or even like the screenwriters or whatever, you know, all these various roles which are essential to creating these, but it's the ones who put the money in are usually the ones who get the greatest payout in the end. And you know, the one, if you put money in, you should definitely get a payout, but it shouldn't be an exclusion of all these other people who are doing the creative work, or what I would say it's the real work. It's like, okay, power to you that you have money and you're wanting to use it for some purpose, but is that really a skill? Is that really a value that you're adding to society? I mean, you know, it's not. It's just paper. It's just digital ones and zeros, and they happen to say that you have millions of them. Good for you. Like, I don't care. Like, that's nothing to me. And I think most people who are real, like, they don't care if you have a bunch of, you know, so-called dollars, because it's all like imaginary anyway. Like, but if you have something creative to offer the world, if you have a valuable service to offer the world, that's valuable, and it should be valued, and it should be valued very highly. And if you're a great artist, an actor, a writer, you know, you should be able to make a living, at least, and a comfortable living, and you shouldn't have to sell out in any way. You know, you should be able to remain true to your integrity and what you believe in, and that should be just fine. But it's become so corporatized and corrupt. It's insanely corrupt, and Hollywood is sickeningly corrupt. And even with all this pedophilia and all this other stuff that's coming out, it's just, we're seeing the sickness reveal itself. And so, yeah, I'm working with these various people in person that are movers and shakers themselves. And so I don't have to just like advertise this out to the world and just hope that people will get on board. You know, it's going to be more like a lot of word of mouth amongst people who are already in the various industries, who are ready for a change, who are ready for something new and better. And so, yeah, I think that's going to be the most effective way to get these messages out. And then you'll see the results more than...
Oh, Aaron! Oh, Aaron! Go! Aaron!
Karen's my best cheerleader.
I definitely think whatever we do, it needs to be multi-pronged, or all directions approach. And it's going to be a big transition. So yeah, we'll definitely need to reach people online or in all directions. But ultimately, I do think we have to root whatever we're doing in reality, and not forget about, for instance, the people that may not be online, or, you know, but a lot of times those people you don't have to reach. They already live in the right way. So
yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, you know, hopefully this stuff will affect everyone in a positive way, and it'll just kind of infiltrate people's lives, and they'll be glad it did. you know, and that's my expectation, really. You know, and I'm not the greatest at marketing. I need to get better at it, like, you know, using the online tools to get out there. I know how to do it all. I'm kind of so swamped in all these other things that, you know, I can't play that game as much. I would love to be living in nature right now, quite honestly. You know, I'm thinking about it, actually, just trying to figure out how to get back to it, because that's where I'm happy. That's where I'm most creatively inspired. And I've been living sort of in the city for way too long. It's, you know, I came to the city. I was living in nature, very, very close to nature, for quite a long time, and I'd come to realize that this is the way that we were intended to live, and that most of society is built up around a deep-seated fear of insects. but like, essentially, you know, there's a reason. There's a reason for everything. Everything natural, it has a purpose, and the city is really an attempt by the elite forces to pull us away from that natural, the natural laws and the natural forces, and also create a dependency on the city or the corporations and the money system in order to keep us, like, constantly distracted from what's natural. And but I believe at the same time, though, like, you know, you spend 2 weeks in nature, and in a way that's, like, not just camping, like, not just kind of I don't know, off the earth, but if you spend 2 weeks in nature, you got to get past all your uncomfortableness and all your insecurities and all the fears of the darkness or the insects.
Yeah.
But once you get past all that, it's another realm. It's amazing. It's impossible to describe with words, because it's what was intended. Absolutely, 100%, no doubt in my mind. And that's why I kind of came back into the city, was to share this information with people, and ultimately to build solutions that could bring us all back there in mass. You know, I believe that's the real awakening, is when we go back to the earth and we live in harmony with the earth, not just, oh, we're not polluting or damaging the earth anymore, that's the first step, but then, like, more importantly, where we're in the dirt, you know, and we're getting to know the trees around us and the life around us, and we're getting to relate to animals and life in a whole new way, which is really the old way. It's the way that we will all, it, like, awakens in your heart, you know. It's like, this is how it has been for thousands of years, and how humanity was meant to be, and then we lose it all because of these cities and the concrete jungles and name it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Definitely. I forgot to mention that I was talking with Hori Sheet Show in email, and he says hi to everybody. But yeah, didn't you connect with him at some point?
No, Kerry, sorry,
Yeah.
just in there.
Yeah, I've known Hori for a little while, and yeah, he's definitely on board with all this stuff, and he's helped out some. He's helped out some, and you'll see that some of the fruits of that here in the very near future. But yeah, he's on it.
Yeah, lately he's been kind of down, but
yeah,
he'll get back up.
So I mean, you know, life has its ups and downs, especially for people like us, you know.
Yeah.
Just personal challenges combined with just like the good portion of the world's population calling us all idiots, you know.
Yeah.
Kind of it can eat at you after some time. I can relate.
I definitely
much love
think,
for that guy.
Yeah, me too. Definitely. I definitely think that, like you were saying, how you were connecting with nature, and then you you kind of went into the city to sort of spread that sort of message. I definitely think we all have our different paths to walk.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
I think ultimately it all kind of leads towards the same direction.
Yeah. It's the same mountaintop.
Yeah.
Different paths. Same peak.
So how do you so you've got Project Lumen, and I'm just wondering how we can really get that and things like permaculture more popular in the sort of awareness truth community, because it really goes together. Like it complements flat Earth perfectly. I mean, it's a
absolutely.
Huh.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what's going on here. Like, and you know, I'm going with the flow, but at the same time, the flow is bringing these people to me. It's bringing these people together that are, I would say, light warriors. And you know, everyone's extremely driven, extremely passionate, and more than anything, us all choosing to work together, look past our differences. If we can work through our issues with one another, no matter what they are, you know, if we have disagreements on like belief systems, get over it, because that's not what this is about. You know, it's about working together to change the world right here and now. And the more that we can all come together, unite in that central philosophy, it's gonna produce that result. And so,
I agree, Aaron.
Thank you. Yes. And you know, there's so much petty things going on. That's what they try to do. I mean, they come in here, divide and conquer. That's their motto, right? Is they're going to come in, they're going to try to get people to question various things that you've come to realize, or they're going to find some way, whether it's like, oh, over the map. Like, come on, we don't have a map. Like, we have various ideas of what it might look like, but how could we possibly have a map? So anyone that's coming in saying that we're all shills because we believe a certain map is just, it's lunacy. And you know, we just get over that kind of stuff. If someone comes at you attacking you from that perspective, just block them or drop them, whatever you got to do. Don't even entertain them. Don't even, you know, don't be the trolls. And
definitely.
And but do feed the other fellow warriors that are on this path. And you know, we are fed by coming together like we're doing right now. Here we're having this conversation for all the world to see, you know, and this is the kind of work that more and more of us need to just throw ourselves into. Don't be afraid, you know, don't be afraid of getting your identity out there. Like, I'll tell you this, like, you know, Mark Sargent actually was the one who doxed me years ago. I asked him not to read my last name, and he read it, and then I was just like, oh, well, you know, we'll see what happens. And I went out full force, used my full name. I have experienced no recourse from that. And, you know, I think a big part of that is I haven't invited it. I haven't really encouraged it. Whenever someone comes attacking me, I usually just ignore them. And I'm fine. In that regard, I'm fine, you know. I will also say be careful who you trust. You know, we can't just be trusting everyone just because they have similar beliefs. You know, that's very dangerous. We have to be very discerning with who we trust, because not everyone is a light warrior. And we have to have high standards in that regard. For people who are really on this team to change the world, a lot of people will present themselves as such, but then it turns out that they have these selfish motives that come out over time, and you know, that can be a waste of our time, and it can be disastrous sometimes. And I've had a lot of that, actually. You know, I've been too trusting, I will admit.
I'm saying yes, Aaron, tonight.
You're agreeing that I've been too trusting, Karen?
I think Karen got a quick lesson recently.
Not just you being trusting, us as well.
Yeah, everyone, absolutely. We've all had those lessons, and they're hard lessons, but important lessons, because you know, the reality is that we are the minority still, and we do want what's best for everyone. And unfortunately, everyone can't see that, and that's okay. We just kind of have to proceed anyway, knowing that people will ultimately come around, and because what we're doing is in alignment with light, it's sustainable, and so we're thinking of the future, you know, and that's going to prevail over this wealth gap, unsustainable system that's based on hierarchy and power over others. It's not going to last forever. And with enough energy and drive from us light warriors, we can actually speed that process up, I believe. And that's how I live my life. Just trying to just be a catalyst, you know?
Yeah, I definitely think mistakes will be made, you know, nobody's perfect. And a lot of it is, you know, just people's intentions and motives. And, you know, you can really judge people by what they do, or what the, you know, the saying goes, judge them by their fruits.
Right. Absolutely. And then don't judge anyone, you know.
Well, yeah.
Be discerning with people, but like, you know, if someone just wants to be a sheep, wants to be asleep, let them. Don't judge them for it, though, because, you know, have compassion for them instead. You know, just try to have empathy that, like, you know, that's their comfort zone. That's where they're at, and, you know, maybe someday they'll wake up out of it, and maybe not, and that's okay. You know, strive to have no judgment, because, you know, with that mindset, then we are producing. We're constantly producing. We're constantly creating. You know, that's like, I think that's really where judgment comes from. Is it's self-judgment. You know, we might put on someone else, like, oh, that person's this or that, but really what that's aimed at is ourselves. We feel inadequate in those qualities, or maybe like we're a hypocrite or whatever. You know, we're judging ourselves, and that's not healthy, first of all, and it's not going to produce these results that we all desire. Instead, encourage each other, you know, plant seeds. If someone just wants to be asleep, then plant some seeds and move on. You know, don't waste your time. Don't try to pull them up when they don't want to come along, but do plant seeds, because those seeds might grow into something, you know, into an awakening, that person. But don't waste your time.
I think playing permaculture will probably like a lot of what you're saying, Aaron. Don't you? Playing permaculture.
Yeah, I definitely, it definitely resonates. Definitely agree.
Awesome.
Yeah, man. I'm wondering if we can also connect with the activists, and maybe some of what the activism could be is part flat earth, part, you know, permaculture, or Project Lumen, or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm connected with a bunch of people who are doing very good activism in various ways, you know, around flat earth, but also around various other things. And I have a bunch of anonymous friends, as in friends who are in the anonymous group. And, you know, there's a bunch of various types of activism happening there. A lot of that's behind the scenes. You don't even see it, but it's good stuff. You know, and we will see the fruits of those labors more and more as time goes on. We'll see how much they've been working to end a lot of these sick crimes against humanity from kind of behind the scenes. And so I'm a really massive supporter of that kind of work. And I can appreciate that those guys need to be a little more anonymous. But you know, this time, a lot of them are also showing their face and their name, and stepping up to the plate and saying, you know, we need to change, we need to fix these things, and getting out there, and even, you know, doing it in ways like, there's this guy, Steven Crowder. you know, he's the one that he's like that has the famous picture. I forget what the original says. It's like the sign always says like whatever, changed my mind. And he's just sitting there with a cup of coffee. But you know, he's funny, right? He's funny and he's logical, and he's like, he doesn't really get in people's faces, although his stuff is very challenging. It's very shocking to people, but he does that on purpose to kind of help people snap out of it, and he'll get a rise out of people, but he comes at it with reason and logic and a certain degree of compassion, and you know, he's looking at things and he's helping the people to look at things, and he's using a lot of humor to do so. And I think that's a really good technique, especially if you're going to be an activist. Don't just get out there with your Molotov cocktails and start, you know, violence. Don't do that at all, actually. Instead, do the opposite. Do something, you know, peaceful, civil. Go somewhere where you're not going to be, you know, not going to be disturbing the peace, but somewhere that, you know, you might draw enough of attention to get people to take a look. And, you know, if you need to do something, I mean, just, you know, putting a sign that says the earth is flat, prove me wrong, for example, you know, something like that, then, you know, you're going to have people coming up to you all day long trying to prove, you know, having problems with this, and you just stay calm. And, I mean, you know, you can be animated, you can be like, use your emotion, but don't let it get the best of you, you know. Instead, like, really just be a force of light in that way, a force of truth, where, you know, you're just a beacon that people can be drawn to, and those are the seeds. You're planting seeds, you know. And so activism can come in many ways. You know, what we're doing right now is activism. You know, we're actively talking about these things on a public platform. That's activism.
And Aaron, I this feeling I get is without this great big ego, and much more peacefully, positively.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Don't let your ego get the best of you. I mean, you know, I think, yeah, that's the ego is really the mind killer, you know, it's, or the heart killer even. You know, it gets in the way. It prevents us from really achieving what we're striving to achieve here. You know, we want unity. We don't want division. And if the ego is involved, it's going to cause division almost every time, you know. And so don't get in people's faces. Let them come to you if they're interested, you know, because the ego is what wants to prove things to people. And if you're looking towards kind of, I would say, you know, it's not about letting go or dropping the ego. It's about developing a healthy ego. Which a healthy ego is really one that is empowered in the self, there's self-confidence, but it's not arrogance. It's not aggressive.
You need one. I watched this program once. You even need one to get out of bed, but it's how you use it. It's
exactly. Yeah.
It's who you are.
Yeah.
See,
exactly.
It's not people's fault, unfortunately, is it? It's the way that we've now been bred. It's the way they've made the laws. You know, you can't even feed a homeless person anymore. You know, we've got laws now that says they've put it in other things to make it look like it was about immigrants, you know, about them being slaves. But really what it was to actually take more of your rights away, and so that basically you can't help anybody and nobody can help you. And it's once you instill all these kind of things, and then you're watching the television, everybody's breaking up and arguing, and Kardashians, whatever it is, oh, I watch that, and yeah, you get locked into all that, and yeah.
Also, if you know,
it's very narcissistic, isn't it? Really, my generation back a bit, it's very narcissistic now, very programmed.
Yeah, I would say also, if you know you're the type of person with a big ego, just know that, be aware that we're aware of that aspect of yourself, and you can kind of, you know, deal with life differently. I don't know. People are different, so that's the hard thing. A lot of us have different characteristics.
There's some really nice Englishmen, but a lot of Englishmen, the ones that haven't woken up, they're really egotistic. Oh, it's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, that might be true of every country.
even in our history, the bit that we can sort of go to, it's only so many years back that women have had their rights anyway. And a lot of men see women as, well, your place is in the kitchen looking after me. And I never minded all that, but emotionally we were the same. And a lot of men just don't, well, you know, I'm working, you're at home with the children, you know. And I thought it was an emotional equality, I think, that we were looking for. It was about maybe money originally, but it should have been much more about emotional equality. I think that this whole thing's just, well, it's just ridiculous, isn't it?
I mean, there's still some. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I sometimes wonder if that whole movement for women's rights, it was really just the system trying to trick people into sucking women into what I would say the unnatural system. And I wonder if men were, in the past, I wonder if they were protecting their families from all of that negative stuff. I don't know. I just sometimes wonder.
I don't know. I grew up learning in my sociology at school is that, you know, like in the Victorian times, a man basically didn't have to really do that much in a way to get a divorce. He could just say, yeah, well, this, that, and it's. But a woman had to prove he was having an affair. There was a list of things a woman had to do if she wanted a divorce because they weren't on the same levels. And that's only, you know, in a history we can sort of go to. Although something happened in the 1800s with the floods, whether it's natural or them or whatever it is. So, and in a sense, I'm wondering myself whether, you know, like looking at stuff with Martin Leakey, you know, like he's saying, do these people look like they're building or do they look like they're digging themselves out? And so these buildings were here, something's happened, they're digging themselves out, and we are the recovering generation from that. And everything that's been here got destroyed, and then we had to recover. See, and now, you know, we're getting to a place where a lot of us, I don't mean to, it sounds, we're not getting too clever, but we are in a sense. Like we're seeing behind the veil now. We're seeing things a lot of people aren't seeing or understanding or wanting to understand, like turning into almost scientists.
Right.
You know, like the things we're looking at, you know, now I'm looking at research all the time, you know, and listening to Santos and all these things I was never been interested in before. Yeah. Or wanting to understand more about where we live, what this is about. I think that's just the saddest bit, isn't it? It's that we wake up and then we realise we're in somebody else's game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very well put, Karen.
For me, realizing how we could be living really gives you a perspective on perhaps the past history. And you know, constantly we're told that, oh, we have all this technology, we're smarter, all this stuff. When in the past, they obviously had to take care of themselves. They had to, you know, live life naturally. And to me, that involves much more knowledge and awareness than what we're told.
I know, but it's a bit like we're on a film set. Yeah. That's what it is, because they've got things like pyramids. Well, who built them and who were they? You now know here in the UK we've had elongated headed people. It's not just places like Peru and that. They're here and they were sort of killed off and they were shorter and they built long barrows and they reckon, obviously the archaeologists, that they had an extra chakra. So these people were doing what Aaron said. They were telepathic and all that. It's like, well, we're only just discovering that now, and we think we're so clever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was our natural. When we had that intuition, we were able to, we were attuned to the cosmos, to the earth in ways that you could understand the purpose of building, like, say, a pyramid. Even like, I mean, it's possible that even the pyramids were built to act as sort of energy control mechanisms that were understood at the time. It was like technology that was understood, but then we've gotten lost, or they've restrained our energies in many ways, and so now we are that much more lost in this illusion, and then all of our history has been kept from us. So we can't really see what actually happened, where the pyramids actually came from. And we're told all these various stories that don't add up. And so it just becomes,
in your mind, you've got back to like cavemen, and the way that they've told us our history is that you suddenly realise that these people were far more advanced, but there's not enough of their stuff. Like, where's the stuff where they made it? And you know, like, there's a big chunk of the puzzle.
Yeah.
So annoying because there's this big chunk missing. I mean, the other day I watched this video, right? I think a tsunami had come in, but there wasn't water there. Was it an earthquake? No, it must have been an earthquake. And basically, the land turned to like water. It wasn't water, but it was moving like water. And this poor person on top of this roof, and then all the trees, everything were just moving. Everything had sort of. So maybe these things are happening. They're just not being recorded, and maybe they tapped into all that because you could sure move things a long way with that because the trees, everything was moving. The ground was moving.
Oh.
I mean, you never know whether it's fake, do you? Because you know what it's like.
Right.
But I saw that. I think I saw it on YouTube.
Huh. I'd be interested in seeing that.
Link for it, and I was like, "What is that?" Everything was moving.
Huh.
Trees were moving past as if they were, you know, on a river, and they were moving.
Wow.
So, do we really understand what this is all about here?
Oh,
I mean,
obviously not.
in our history of this we've been researching, there seem to be these great big electrical arcings everywhere, and I mean, you wouldn't have wanted to been around when one of them was happening. It would have just disintegrated you. And then you've got someone like Wise Up, you know, when he's looking at things, and when he can see these structures in there, so can I. Like the buildings are all putrefied, and what's all this?
Yeah, well, all the mud fossils, you know, that are obviously like people that were, or giants even, that were like frozen in stone somehow.
Yeah.
I think
that's undeniable.
People think of like all that happening, putrefying. It might take centuries, but in certain conditions, it doesn't.
Well, especially if you have a technology that does it, like Medusa technology.
Yeah, and if it's true, I remember watching that. That's one of the first star constellations that comes up. It's Medusa. It's like, what?
Right.
Oh, that's a constellation?
Or whatever it is, those stars Methuselah's in, they're one of the first ones to come up at night. So, it's there, and it's like, it's almost as if Wise Up stuff's right, then it's like Methuselah came in and everything got turned to stone.
Well, you're talking about Adam Weishaupt, the supposed creator of the Illuminati. Is that who you're talking about, Karen?
Wise Up? No, he does. That basically, when we're looking at rocks and things, that in there, there are buildings.
Okay. I thought you were talking Weishaupt. Yeah. Okay.
Don't worry. I was talking about David Wise, and I started talking about Wise Up, and they went on the Hangout. No, what do you want to? I said, no, I was talking about someone else. Like, I don't know where that came from. I was talking about the wrong person.
Yeah, well, you know, I still want to talk about Adam Weishaupt for a second, anyway, because what's funny is like I've been researching all this stuff about the history of America and the world, and looking at it through very interesting lenses of like you could say metaphysical lenses, and seeing that, like, for example, George Washington, not the first president of the United States, but most likely the same person as Adam Weishaupt, who was most likely the creator of the Illuminati. Also Freemasonry. We already know that George Washington was instrumental in the Freemasonry in America. And it's just like, you know, this is how long this whole thing goes back, how far it goes back. It's like, and it goes much further back, even to, you know, Egypt, back to even Atlantis, probably is like the first time when these deceptions were really implemented. And it's it's like this, you know, I'm realizing like the depth of the game, right? The depth of the game is such that there was originally two forces on Earth, and one was to live in harmony with nature. The other one was to defile that and to create this further separation. And it's possible, in fact, that it was all for the purpose of ultimately reuniting a great awakening, if you will. And I can relate all this to even like 9/11 and Trump, and just, it's crazy. Like all the stuff in the Bible is, you know, essentially there's various prophecies within the Bible, not just the Bible, but other holy works that, or various other prophecies that align with this whole phenomena occurring, where the whole thing was, you know, the fall from grace originally, and then reuniting through time, remembering, becoming one again. And I think that's what we're going through. And so part of their agenda, part of their strategy has been to keep anything that would empower us away from us. So for us to realize that we have the ability to create our reality, or to communicate directly with our minds, or to manifest things with our minds, like, they don't want us to know that.
And a lot of people don't realize that your reality is actually coming from your own head. So if you haven't got that far, you're never going to get the rest, are you? Can I just say, we've been going for nearly 3 hours now. I also think that maybe, you know, in the next few weeks or something, you should come back, Aaron, and actually talk about Project Lumen again. And maybe, you know, like when I was talking about it before you came on, you know, a bit like your project's like a tree inside, and maybe talk a bit more about that, because you've talked about it numerous times without showing it again.
Yeah, I'd love to show it. Well, I'd love to just present it. I would just love to be done with it. You know, to be able to present it. I know I keep on coming on here, Karen, thinking I'm going to be able to present it, but I tell you, this stuff takes longer than one thing.
You don't have to present maybe the whole thing. Maybe on the Hangout, people see it's a tree, but maybe you can talk about a few parts of it, because with your project, like the other people who come on with their projects, like Stan Smith and so forth, Dave Marsh, you've got to keep pushing it and keep coming out and being a bit more public. You just have to.
Absolutely. I fully agree. And that's why I'm very grateful for you, Karen, and this platform that you've created here, and you are really helping in that regard. And my plan, my full plan here is within the next weeks to I'm going to launch some projects onto the World Wide Web, and then I'm going to start like regular videos myself that are going to be very action oriented, and I'm going to be bringing various people on. Yeah, basically, like,
you know, like Sun and Moon can mirror them or something, you know.
Sure, yeah, that'd be great. Absolutely. And you know, bring you on as well, Karen, and various other people.
Yay!
You know, yeah, it's gonna be basically like a team of light warriors that are actually taking the steps and just showing people how it's done. You know, this is how we get things done in the world. And you know, we've kind of endlessly gone around with all these various concepts, and it's good work. It's great work, you know, but it's time to really step it up to the next notch, I believe, and take this to the streets, if you will, and start really getting the word out there and getting people empowered to be able to be a part of this change, participate. You know, that's my whole thing. My new thing here is to just start. Well, it's like an ongoing campaign, you might say.
You know, I think you know, like we've got James as well, who does the laws of anxiety, and the thing is, he's got the whole picture in his head. And I go, yeah, but you've got to break it down a bit, because people can't take the whole thing in one go. They can't. So maybe, you know, we can help by, you know, you doing bits, going through bits of your project. We'd like to do that, because obviously we want Project Lumen to work.
Yeah.
Just say,
absolutely.
Yeah, Of course. Playing permaculture. Do you want to say anything?
Well, what you were just saying, I can definitely relate with having a picture in your head and not being able to describe it. Yeah. I have one question for Aaron. Since so many people are pretty kind of down and pessimistic and they think the world's going, to hell or whatever, and what do you think the online world or the mainstream sort of media would look like if we were actually gaining ground and, sort of changing things for the better? Because as I say, the revolution will not be televised. Is that what's happening, do you think?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, if you pay attention to things like QAnon, for example, you can see a massive rift between what is actually going on in reality as opposed to what's being presented on all the mainstream channels, pretty much. And then if you look at, like, there's a lot of shadow banning going on and just censorship in general, and like with Facebook and Twitter and Google, and they're just stepping up their game in that regard because this is their last chance. They know that their time is limited, and so they're really trying to maintain the control that they have. Meanwhile, people like myself and others that are tech savvy are creating solutions that are going to replace these systems. I mean, let's be honest, Facebook is horrific as far as it's just it's bad technology, it's bad software, and so is Twitter, and actually Google is complete shite. And so somehow, it's just because of their market share, because they have so many people that are on their platforms that we still use them. And they do have certain things like the Hangout here. Well, guess what, though? I'm capable of building the same thing. All these things, like, we can build our own versions of it. We can be using it even with our smaller networks until they grow. And I think it'll be a kind of a migration from the old systems that are full of censorship and bias to the new systems, which are going to be straight to the people. And that's one of my main projects too, is to create an actual legitimate source of news. We can get this information out to the people, and we can be doing professional segments on various topics, presenting it without bias, and just presenting the information as it truly is, in order to give people a place to go. Because right now everyone's so confused because, if you pay attention to CNN, you think all these things, and if you pay attention to to certain online sources, you think all these other things, and it's all contradictory. And so I think most people are running around in a state of confusion right now. And so what it will really look like is when the cloud starts lifting and we start seeing that clarity, when we start having some sources, some reliable sources of knowledge and information, and even action. There will be points where it'll be time for us to start taking more action. But what action do you take? Do I go into the streets and protest, Kavanaugh? No, that's probably not the action to take. But there will be action to take, and a lot of us have already been taking action in various forms. And so this is more for the general collective. Is like, if you've just been soaking everything in up until now, prepare yourself. Because you're someone who's more awake than most, and will be asking for your help to really change things quickly. It doesn't have to take a long time, and it won't take a long time. And one of the main things I'll say about that is that what we're creating here, window of opportunity. We are gradually building towards the window of opportunity, which will be only open for a certain amount of time. And we need to seize that opening when it really happens. And it's coming soon. Very soon. And so be prepared to just invest yourself into changing the world. Don't settle for less, essentially. and know that, like, you know, we all matter and we all can contribute to this. And by working together, that's how we will succeed. And so if you have any differences, any conflicts, figure out how to work them out, or maybe you just need to get that person out of your life so that you can be optimistic and positive and grow at your own pace. But really find that stable core within yourself, and then be willing to bring it in a unified whole to the collective.
Yeah, I definitely think that we have an opportunity now, having the obvious truth on our side and essentially the whole system against us, and people can see that. And that's why we're gaining so much ground, and why people are getting while we're gaining, a lot of people into this pursuit. But I think that it's possible that if they wanted to take back control, they could just then start mimicking our truth, and essentially people will go back to them and stay in the system for all, for the authority that they've set up, or the hierarchy they've set up.
Yeah.
So
as it comes out that more and more of these corporations are not just corrupt but evil at their core, that won't be allowed. It won't. I mean, they're gonna be dissolved. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if in the not too distant future Google is dissolved, because Google is one of the worst. If you look at the origins of Google, if you look at what they've done, it's horrific.
Don't you think they could just change names though and form another, like they always do?
The reason that they'll be dissolved is because the people that have been most corrupt behind the scenes at the highest levels are being arrested, or going to be brought to trial and arrested, for these crimes they've committed. I mean, horrific crimes that I don't even want to talk about. They're just so bad. But like, that's why it's all being done behind the scenes. It's out of respect for humanity. Humanity cannot, as a whole, comprehend what's going on. It's just too much. And so there's a lot that's being done out of that respect. If you guys, everyone in America should have just received like the presidential alert warning the other day. Was that Tuesday or something? And there's a reason for that. That's because essentially there's roundups happening right now. There's arrests being done. You just don't hear about them. You won't hear about them on the news, but it all goes all the way up to the news. A lot of the mainstream media corporate giants are some of the perpetrators of the worst crimes. And, you could absolutely say that bias, even though freedom of speech needs to be properly respected and allowed continuously. So if CNN wants to do fake news, and that's got to be allowed. However, when you own all the media and it's all biased, that's a problem, and that's a violation of really freedom of speech, because no one else who's actually speaking an alternative perspective has a voice. It's a real problem, and that's going to come to an end as a lot of these things change behind the scenes. And I think there's a lot of respect being paid to how to do this without causing too much chaos. Just think about, like, what if Trump were to come out and announce that the Earth is flat and that we've been lied to? Just think about the revolt that would happen. Think about the chaos in the streets, and people would just, they would want to impeach him, and they would say that he's lost his mind. So he couldn't even do that, even if he believes that, or if he's aware of that and has that intention. So instead, maybe what he'd do is plant the seed and allow us, the people, to grow with these ideas ourselves, make these kinds of channels, have these kinds of discussions publicly, and awaken more and more people ourselves, because that's a more gradual process, and it's not going to be as disruptive to society. But there very well may come a time in the very near future, in the next couple months actually, things could get really crazy. And that's why I'm really standing up now as representative of the truth. I try to stay very in tune with what's going on in all these different groups, and try to paint the whole picture. And so I want to be someone who you can trust, that you can come to for answers and questions, that can do my best to answer them. And if I can't, I can bring in people who can, and we can kind of get to the heart of the matter and what our position and involvement in it can be. Because ultimately, it's going to be up to all of us to stand up within our power and speak the truth and do what's right, and that's it. That's all that's really going to be asked of you. But it is going to be asked of you. And if you're not willing to do that, then you're kind of part of the problem, ultimately. And so just think about that. Consider that, everyone who's listening to this, that there's no real good reason to not share your light, share your truth. You might have maybe sign an NDA. There's certain reasons, I guess, that are good reasons at this point in time. But more and more as time goes on, it's going to be, if you're aware, if you're awake, you're a warrior. You're part of the team that's going to help awaken everyone else. And it's not a burden. It's an opportunity. Like I promise you, if you came here, if you're aware, if you're awake in any way right now, that's because you as a spirit chose to come to Earth during these times to wake up and then help your fellow man wake. That's it.
See,
so don't deny it. Embrace it.
I get kind of suspicious about the allowance of this truth to be out there, because for me, the answer is to turn away from this whole unnatural system and not just turn it into sort of flat earth flavored whatever.
Yeah.
And I can see what you said being a good thing, but I can also see it as kind of a double-edged sword, where we are sort of taking the steam off, and perhaps they can then take it over, like I said, and it just becomes mainstream flat earth, and then we lose that sort of spark of being against the system.
Yeah, I mean, there's a double-edged sword to everything, and nothing is black and white, really. And so, it is a game. You got to think of it. You got to like put yourself in various people's shoes. How could we possibly change this society from the inside out without having to play the game in certain ways? People like us don't really have to play the game as much. But if you're going to enter the political arena, you have to play the game in order to enact change. And so it's don't judge a book by its cover, and definitely don't just like adopt a narrative that other people are saying just because they're saying it. Just because flat earthers say, for example, space doesn't exist, that's not necessarily true. It's not what we were told. That's probably true, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
That's semantics, some of it.
It is. And so don't get lost in semantics, don't get lost in like just all politicians are evil. That's not a true statement. All corporate execs are evil. That's not a true statement. A good portion of them, absolutely. And like a lot of Hollywood execs, yeah, absolutely. But not all of them. There's a lot of good people out there. And the thing is, they're not being reported on. The good things that happen in the world are not reported on. And that's a fact.
Well, that's like how doctors care about people, but I still don't trust doctors.
Yeah. And I mean, that doesn't mean the doctors aren't necessarily good people, and they aren't doing their best from what they've been given. It's just that like you've seen a better way. You've seen, and just like I've seen a better way in terms of physics. I don't trust a physicist necessarily knows more than I do about physics, even if they have a PhD. I don't care. They're still indoctrinated. They're still just believing things because other people have told them to believe it. And don't do that anywhere is what I'm saying. And instead, just kind of become comfortable with the unknown. Become comfortable not knowing exactly what the shape of the earth is, what the map of the earth is, what the nature of reality is, and then put yourself in situations that you can connect. You know, connection is important. That's whether it's with people or with nature, both are important. And through that, we kind of will find our truth. We will, and then once we find our truth, we'll know what to do. As we find our purpose in life, it just naturally, we naturally live it. But if we're constantly trying to intellectually figure out what side of the coin to be on, we'll always be on the wrong side, because it's not black and white. You know, it never is. And there's so much intricacy. You know, how could we possibly change this system without even playing by their rules to some degree? You know, like I could be a sovereign kind of person where I'm just like, okay, I'm not gonna pay my taxes. I'm not going to register my car, all that kind of stuff. You know, but here's the problem with that is now I'm risking putting myself in jail. And what good am I in jail? You know, and yeah, granted, income tax unconstitutional and all the ownership of people's birth certificates, all that, and the trading of it on Wall Street, it's horrific, right? But at the same time, that's the condition that we're in, and so we need to be honest with that. And then we need to look at, well, what's the alternative? How can we fix this issue, rather than just get caught up in it? Even if you're feeding it, like by yelling at it all the time, you know, if you're constantly yelling about vaccines or chemtrails or whatever it is, well, you know, it's very possibly an injustice that's being committed on us. I will agree to that. How is yelling about it really changing it? You know, planting seeds in people's minds, helping them understand, you know, urging people not to vaccinate their kids. And here's a whole list of reasons why not. Yeah, that's good work. And that's going to help to awaken some people, but some people are still going to vaccinate their kids, even though you gave them all that information. You know, some people are still going to get chemotherapy, even though there's all these other alternatives there. And that's, again, come back to compassion, you know, and not seeing things black and white, but just having unconditional acceptance of ourselves and each other, and knowing that we're all doing the best we can, and some people are more inclined. Like I said, we came here to wake people up, and this is part of it. It's like you have to learn the technique. Like I've been reading Sun Tzu's Art of War lately, you know, and now am I planning on becoming a general in the, you know, military? No. I believe that all war is wrong. But here's the thing. This is their rule book. This is their guidebook. These are the tools and techniques.
With Project Lumen, it's just a bit differently done, but the same sort of, you know, it's got to have someone's always got to be looking after somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
Can I just say, you will come back soon then and give us a bit more breaking.
Absolutely, yeah, I'd love to.
Because then it does not, so, you know, like, it's when you have to explain the whole thing, isn't it, in one go?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see where I get to, you know. I mean, I could be in a whole nother place by then. I should be, actually. So I look forward to that.
You mean living?
Yeah. And, get this world turning.
I do think if we're going, I do think that I kind of see trying to change the system into something is kind of like playing Monopoly and trying to change the rules, though. I mean, like, ultimately, if you want to get away from Monopoly, you have to not play the game. You know, like, ultimately, we have to kind of just back away from all of it, or else we are feeding it, because that their expertise is preventing people from changing the system. So, I mean, the only answer I see is, since the name of the game ultimately is disconnection, it really is connection that really will bring us back to reality, bring us back to where we should be. And things like permaculture can help jumpstart our knowledge of how to do that.
Absolutely. And I'll say this about, getting out of the system as opposed to playing by their rules. And I totally appreciate that perspective and understand it. And that's where I've been most of my life. And it's probably in the last, 10 years that I've kind of been more on the angle of, doing enough to be in the system, not of it, as in that I'm not a slave to the system, but I am participating within it, so that I can develop my power to be able to change it from within. And if enough of us come together in that initiative, it's done, right? Because here's the difference. Like, what do? What do we all go to the edge? What do we all go to the north and disappear? We all ascend. It's and the problem I have with all that kind of thinking, or even just going off the grid. How are you paying? Are you not paying property taxes on the land that you're on? Are you just in public land that really isn't yours? And are you even legally? Are they going to come in there and just swoop you up, or
property taxes is a major hurdle.
Yeah, and it's almost impossible, or if not impossible, to get away from this system. We're enmeshed in it, and so that's why I say that. And plus, most importantly, this is our Earth. This isn't their Earth. It's not like a few elitist individuals who get to have the whole Earth to themselves and everyone is their slave. No. I never agreed to that. None of us ever agreed to that. And so let's not stand for that. Let's not allow that to be happening anymore. And so instead, let's stand up for what is right, which is that this is our Earth, our collective. It's not just humans' Earth. It's all life on Earth equally has right and access to this Earth. And us living in harmony, which is what nature demonstrates, is really the divine principle. And as we practice that, then we will succeed. We will ultimately take back our Earth, and we will respect it from then on. And we get to chase out these guys who have been wronging us and power over us and trying to enslave us. We get to chase them out, not the other way around. We don't have to leave; they have to leave. And that's the bottom line, and that's where. That's going to be my stance until my demise, which maybe never, because I'm never giving up. And the spirit that's in me is in all of you, and in the sense that we are the rightful. I don't want to say citizens. We are the rightful beings that have. This is our land, and it is the land of the free, and all of it, not just the United States or America, but all of the land is one land, and it's free and open, and no one ever gave anyone a right to say you can possess it and someone else can't. That's just a farce. That's an imagination. But we do need to have peace, and fortunately humans are grown up enough to figure that out at this point in time. Probably for a long time, they just convinced us that we used to be archaic and, just so you couldn't trust. So, they always these excuses why we need government, why we need this centralized government to come in and watch over us like parents, but that's ridiculous. Like, we need to be watching over them at this point, which was the whole point of the Constitution. What's that?
Most of them need to go to prison, and I want the people who sit in those observatories, they need to go to prison as well, pretending that the stars are light years away when they've got these. That Earth Dude's telescope and Joe Hill's telescope gives us a good view, not maybe as close as you'd like to get, but a good view. Look at the size of the thing they've got, and they want to pretend that they're light years away. They need to go to prison, the whole lot.
Yeah, I don't know if ignorance should be considered a crime.
Because they're lying.
But if they know and they're lying, I do think that lying should be considered a crime of some form. Although, that's a tough one. That's a gray area, and we really shouldn't even. I mean, we can talk about it, but I don't think we should try to put too much on that right now because, you know, we have much bigger crimes to deal with, I should say. And
like you say, you just like turn your back and Aaron just gets on with his project Lumen. We've been going for a bit longer now. I do think it's a good time to end. I'm really tired. I'm really sorry.
All right, let's let you get some sleep, Karen.
But you know,
I'd like to say one thing though. To use an analogy, it seems like we're all on here, you know, trying to hold the door open to a prison, essentially, we've been put in. And while we need people to hold that door open and be verbal and all that stuff, we still need people to start flowing out of this prison so we can really get stuff done in the real world. So I would encourage everyone to really dive into permaculture and really start connecting back to Earth and not just being aware of where we are or possibly aware of where we are.
Yeah, twofold. Thank you, Permaculture. And obviously, Aaron, maybe you want to be on the next hangout with Aaron. Permaculture, as you quite like what he's saying and it sort of resonates with where you are.
That'd be cool. I think we need to start connecting and start, you know, taking action and moving forward for sure.
People are starting, conventions are happening. You know, you've got John Smith Globe Live, got other people going out and doing activism. So it is starting. I mean, to when you think this time last year to now, it's just, you just want it done quicker because we just want the truth out as soon as possible. But
it'd be nice to connect with the activists for sure, like John Smith Globe Live and all of them. And maybe they can not just tell people where we might be, but include things like permaculture or Project Lumen or whatever.
Yeah, can you see the chat room, Permaculture? Aaron, like your email. Just see if Patricia's there. Patricia, are you still awake? Patricia? You have to wait. She was there at the beginning.
Sleeping on that heart-shaped pillow.
Yeah, no compliance. No, not coming on. But can I just again thank everybody in the chat room? It's really nice, you know. Now Plain Permaculture is going to talk to Aaron. It's about growing, learning, and becoming better friends with each other. And thanks very much, guys, for Permaculture and for Project Lumen. And we will be back after the weekend. And thanks, guys.
Thanks for having me on, Karen.
Thank you. It's brilliant. We say goodbye off air, Plain Permaculture, but on air. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.